Ms. Stetler, if you could please come to the podium for this CDBG application hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. This is the second public hearing for the Borough's 2017 Community Development Block Grant Program. If you could please sign in, we need to supply the state with the people who were here. Conshohocken is eligible for $112,875. Determination has been made to use the funds for housing rehabilitation and administration of the program. $20,317 will be used for administration, and housing rehabilitation will receive $92,558. The way we break down the housing rehab funds will be used for both delivery services, eligibility determination, bidding, contracting, that sort of thing, and $62,558 will be available for construction. With that money, we will be able to do 2 to 3 homes. In construction, we will use available home funds for anything else that is determined eligible through our delivery service. Does anyone have any comments on how the money is being spent? Thank you. Written and other comments will be accepted until Wednesday, December the 6th. Council will vote on the submission of the application on Wednesday, December the 6th. Applications are due to the state on December the 8th. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stetler. Mr. President?
Call this meeting to order. By the authority invested in me, I hereby declare this meeting of Conshohocken Borough Council duly open and ready to conduct any business that may come before it. Roll call.
Councilmember Sokolowski? Here. Councilmember Barton? Here. Councilmember Flanagan?
Here.
Councilmember Stokely?
Here.
Councilmember Leonard?
Here.
Vice President Tutino?
Here.
President Griffin?
Here.
Mayor Frost?
Here.
Prayer Council.
O divine Master, in deep humility, we place ourselves, our thoughts, and our plans in thy hands. We beg thee to fill our minds and our wills with the gifts of wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, and piety. Help us not to think of self or personal desires, but rather consider the responsibilities laid upon us. Help us to promote as far as possible the welfare of our people and to treat them with impartiality and justice. Grant us the power to set a good example in thought, word, and deed, so that thy blessings will be showered upon us and the people we represent. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't have any announcements, so I'll turn this meeting over to our borough manager staff.
Mr. President, the items on the consent agenda are as follows. To approve and adopt the September 27 budget workshop, October 4th, and October 18 meeting minutes. To approve the October ending treasurer's report and accounts payable in the amount of $561,883.39. To approve the fiscal year 2018 proposed budget and advertise the same as duly required. To authorize appointment of Seiler and Drury for professional services for both the Marywood Park House and Community Center renovation projects. To adopt an amendment to the traffic ordinance to provide for the creation of a stop intersection, including 3 permanent stop signs at the intersection of West 6th Avenue and Freedley Street. And to authorize the manager to approve the lease with Premier Medical for commercial space in Borough Hall. I would need a motion for approval.
I have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I have a second.
I'll second it.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Next item of business under unfinished business is to consider the appointment of applicants for board and commission vacancies. This evening, in front of you, the recommendation is to appoint Jack Cole to the Civil Service Commission and to appoint Stacy Elam to the Human Relations Commission. I would need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. President, the next item of business is new business. We have two items, A and B, that apply to Section 504 officer. Section 504 requires that all borough programs and facilities be accessible to and usable by people with disabilities. The 2017 CDBG application requires documentation that a Section 504 officer has been designated a public meeting. This individual should have familiarity with physical and programmatic accessibility. The recommendation this evening is to appoint Chris Stetler as the Section 504 officer.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
And in order to authorize that, we need to approve Resolution 2017-23, authorizing the designation of that officer. Would need a motion.
Got a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Last item of business, we received a request for an AED to be donated to the VFW. If you are inclined to consider that donation, I would just need a motion for approval.
I would make that motion.
I got a
Yeah, I'll
mo-
second it.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this point in time, we will move into the public hearing. Mr. Savona, if you could please sit down. Mr. Vic Hugh and Mr. Dave Nassiter, if you could please step up.
Good evening, Council. Borough Council will now hold a public hearing to consider a proposed amendment to the Conshohocken Borough zoning ordinance upon the application of Provco Pineville Fayette LP. This is a legislative hearing of Borough Council, and the following procedure will be followed. First, there will be a presentation regarding the proposed amendment by the applicant. Upon conclusion of the applicant's presentation, Borough Council may consider taking action upon the proposed amendment. If there is a motion and second to take action, Borough Council will then take public comment from interested members of the audience. In order to allow for all interested parties to provide their input to Borough Council, public comment will be conducted as follows. We will first hear from any attorneys representing multiple residents of the borough, and they will be allotted 15 minutes each for public comment. We will then hear individual public comment from other interested members of the audience, and they will be allotted 2 minutes each for public comment. A timer is being kept up front that will indicate when your allotted time is up. For anyone interested in making comment, we request that you identify yourself and your address for the record when addressing Borough Council. The public hearing on the proposed amendment to the Conshohocken Borough zoning ordinance is now open. Procedurally, I will mark the following exhibits as borough exhibits to the public hearing. B1 is the application filed by Provco Pineville Fayette LP. B2 is the proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance. B3 is a transmittal letter to the Montgomery County Planning Commission. B4 is a transmittal letter to the Conshohocken Borough Planning Commission. B5 is the review letter of the Montgomery County Planning Commission. B6 is a memorandum of Conshohocken Borough Planning Commission recommendation. B7 is a legal notice for this evening's public hearing. B8 is a transmittal letter to the Times Herald regarding advertisement of tonight's hearing. And B9 is a transmittal letter to the Montgomery County Law Library regarding filing of the proposed amendment. And B10 is notice letters pursuant to the zoning ordinance. I will note that the applicant is present. They are represented by counsel Ross Weiss, Esquire. I will now turn over the hearing to Mr. Weiss for his presentation.
Good evening, members of Borough Council and members of the public here tonight. I'm pleased to be before you. In your current code, in the RO residential district, the section 271201 states what the declaration of legislative intent is for the RO district. It states in the expansion of the declaration of legislative intent contained in Part 1, the intent of the residential office district is to encourage the retention and preservation of existing Victorian and early 20th century residences by permitting residential uses and conditionally allowing limited office conversions. Furthermore, it's the intent of this part to maintain the existing residential landscape of Fayette Street through regulations that allow these conversions. The more property that is in the RO district is the largest parcel in the RO district. It has neither a Victorian house or a 20th century residence. It has, as you will see, Quonset huts, old buildings that have been there for almost 100 years, dating back to the 1920s. The property, as the largest parcel in the RO district, has never been residential. You know that the property is adjacent to your stadium. It is adjacent to a cemetery. It is across the street from the dry cleaning plant and store. It is not in the midst of a solely residential neighborhood. The proposed ordinance that you have before you tonight that we would ask you to act favorably on states that the following uses permitted on properties last occupied or used as a non-conforming commercial use, provided that the property does not contain a Victorian or 20th century residential structure. The uses that this ordinance would permit are a business office, a professional office, a retail establishment, a restaurant excluding drive-in or drive-through, and a convenience retail food store, including the sale of fuel and ATM and lottery sales. No convenience retail food store which provides for the sale of fuel shall be located within 1,000 feet of another convenience retail food store which provides for the sale of fuel. Parking lots or garages are permitted so long as they are secondary to the principal use of the property. The second part of the proposed ordinance, after you have the uses, talks to dimensional standards, and it identifies in subparagraphs 1, 2, 3 the size of the lot width, and the setbacks. In the setback section, it provides for building setbacks, parking space setbacks, and the fuel pump setbacks. The next section provides that the maximum impervious coverage shall be 90% of the lot. Next, there shall be no more than 10 fueling positions if you have a convenience store with fuel sales. The size of the convenience retail store shall not exceed 5,000 square feet, and the maximum height for a canopy over a fueling position shall be 25 feet. The ordinance also provides for certain prohibitions or special regulations to enable the borough to have additional control over any of these uses in the RO district. One, there's a prohibition on any adult use or activity as defined in Section 27202, and that would be adult material. Secondly, a lot may have more than one access way on each street, subject to two regulations. One is that access ways shall be separated by a distance of not less than 100 feet, and where a driveway is limited to right in and right out, the width of each lane of a right in, right out driveway shall not exceed 16 feet, provided that in the case of a driveway on a state road, the lane width may exceed 16 feet if required by PennDOT. For a convenience retail food store, indoor and outdoor seating for dining is prohibited. For a convenience retail food store, drive-through or pickup is prohibited. The last section provides for sign regulations, and in 4 subparagraphs identifies the types of signs that would be permitted for these uses in the RO district. We respectfully request that after you hear public comment, and I'm given an opportunity to respond to the public comment, that you vote favorably and approve this amendment to your zoning code. Thank you.
Does Borough Council have any questions or comments towards the applicant before we move on to public comment?
Not at this time.
I don't see any. Are there any attorneys who are representing multiple constituents who wish to now speak for the allotted 15-minute? Can you please just identify yourself for the record?
Good evening, members of Borough Council. My name is Gary DeVito. And I
Please identify who you represent as well. Thank you.
represent Lisa Rhodes and Claire Dorsey, both residents of the Borough of Conshohocken. I want to thank you for giving us the time this evening. We had originally requested the opportunity to present some witnesses since this matter, everyone knows, has created such significance in the borough. However, we were allotted 15 minutes, so I will try to get through within that time period. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt me. Since 2012, Wawa and its developer, Provco, has been going through this epic effort to try to fit a square peg in a round hole. And frankly, what it's caused is severe economic costs to the borough, divisiveness between its citizens and council and other governing bodies, and a real danger that ultimately, if this is allowed to go through, the whole complexion of Conshohocken will change. And even though that every governing body that has heard this matter, from the Planning Commission twice, to your predecessor, some of whom were on the board, to the zoning board, unanimously decided not to allow this amendment to go through. We're here today with the same proposed amendment. Nothing really has changed. So the mere fact that we're here warrants a brief recitation, in my mind, of the RO district, of the revitalization plan that we've all heard about, of the update, and of the decisions made by Planning Commission, Borough Council previously, and the Zoning Board. And hopefully I'm going to address a few concerns that you had. I watched the video of the last Borough Council meeting, and I want to address a few of those concerns. The revitalization plan was prepared in 2002, updated in 2011, but it formed the basis of the zoning code. It created the RO district. And if you read the revitalization plan, in particular the update in 2011, it's fraught with language about what we wanted to have in the RO district. And I'm going to read you some quotes from the revitalization update. But the clear message is, in no way, shape, or form was it to be something like a Wawa. By the way, the drafters of this revitalization plan, two members, David Bertram, who was the former chair of the Planning Commission, was a task force member. He has opined very strongly against this. And Liz Lankenow, who's an architectural planner, testified at the zoning hearing that this is not an appropriate use for the RO district. Two of the drafters of our own revitalization plan. Let me read you some of the provisions. This is from 2011 revitalization plan. Developing a plan to preserve the character of the borough's neighborhoods is listed as a high priority item. The overall impression from residents, business owners, and elected and appointed officials of Conshohocken is that all want to encourage development in the borough that is consistent with a small town feeling. One of the major issues in the plan's development was ensuring that the community character of the neighborhood is preserved. In expressing caution, the plan drafters say this: Conshohocken, with its excellent regional access, is increasingly recognized by drive-through chain retailers development's needs, which will diminish the Main Street feel and walkability of this thoroughfare. Residents want to see Conshohocken become known for its Main Street feeling and its sense of community, which is bolstered by its desire to see more independently owned stores. While the picture for Conshohocken is bright and its property owners value the small town feel and family-oriented qualities of the borough, its success, to some degree, may threaten those qualities if not planned proactively. Conshohocken is a close-knit, quaint community with historical significance. Over the years, the municipality has maintained a balance in its development by maintaining structures and/or restricting development based upon the historic nature of the area. Moving professional offices to the northernmost end of Fayette Street, off the lower commercial blocks and off the ground floor, would free up valuable additional retail space in Lower Fayette. The streetscape improvements along Fayette Street are good, but more needs to be done to calm the traffic on Fayette. So with this backdrop, I want to give you the history of this application. I've been here from the beginning. It was first presented to the Planning Commission. And after many witnesses were presented, both for Profco and in opposition of Profco, the Planning Commission denied the application for a text amendment. And David Bertram was the chair of that Planning Commission. And if you give me a moment, I want to read his reasons, or a portion of his reasons. Regarding the zoning intent of the RO district, it is to encourage the retention and preservation of existing residents by permitting residential uses and conditionally allowing limited office conversions. And it goes on to say that furthermore, the intent is to maintain the existing residential streetscape of Upper Fayette by not allowing building additions and parking lots to be constructed in the front yard. The not allowing of front yard parking lots is very relevant and important, I believe, as it clearly paints a picture of how we wanted Fayette upper streetscape to look. The comprehensive plan states that the district, quote, serves as a continuation of the existing commercial district. The borough should maintain the upper portion of Fayette Street as a low-intensity, mixed-use residential office area because this provides a sensible transition between the residential and commercial areas. The proposed project unquestionably disregards the intent of the ordinance and the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. It completely rewrites, 1, the accepted permitted use, 2, the dimensional standards, 3, the special regulations, 4, the signage regulations, and 5, the parking regulations. David concluded that I find that in terms of being aligned with our intent for this part of our borough, as we have defined it in our ordinances and comprehensive plan, the proposed project simply is not a match for this site in any way, shape, or form. Can somebody get me some water? Anybody have any water? Is there water here? Thank you. I appreciate it. The matter then went before Borough Council. Thank you, if you don't mind. And some of you were on that council, and you denied the same text amendment that we're here today for. I believe it was 6 votes to 1, and that Borough Council that voted against it is no longer on council. It was then the developers that sought to bring this matter before our zoning board through a petition for a conditional use and a variance, use variance, and made the arguments that they're entitled to a special exception, a use variance, and if not, our Constitution, our zoning code is unconstitutional. With the unlimited resources that Wawa and its developer had, they paraded witness after witness for 4 years and 28 hearings before the zoning board. By the way, none of their witnesses, except for the Moore family, were from Conshohocken. Conversely, we opposed it, and we presented witnesses. And we argued through expert testimony and lay witnesses that it's not the right use and they shouldn't be granted a variance or conditional use. A very reasoned zoning board unanimously decided to not grant either a conditional use, a variance, for the same application that you're here today. And I want to talk about that opinion. If you'll give me a few minutes, I want to read the portion that's most relevant. Before I go into that, I just want to ask all of you to consider this. And the opinion was 61 pages. I don't know if any of you read it. It was a very reasoned opinion. I'm going to read a section of it. But I want you to think about this. The zoning board spent 4 years. We spent 4 years presenting 50, 100 witnesses, 28 hearings. They made the right decision, and their reasoning was very sound. So the question becomes, do we reverse the zoning board after that Herculean effort to really look at what's best for Conshohocken? I'm going to read you a section, and bear with me. It's a little lengthy, but it's really worth reading. This is the opinion written by the zoning board. The protestants presented considerable testimony and evidence on the effect of the change of use on the character of the neighborhood. In addition, testimony reflected that this use, meaning the application, in this district is in direct conflict with the legislative intent behind the creation of the residential office district and inconsistent with the borough's comprehensive plan upon which the design of the zoning ordinance is based. The board finds this use detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of this neighborhood in 3 ways. 1, the transfer of toxic chemicals in a residential pedestrian neighborhood. 2, the increase in traffic in terms of turning movements, access to the main thoroughfare, and traffic patterns on quiet residential streets and adjacent recreation areas. And 3, hours of operation in conjunction with noise and light nuisances. The declared legislative intent of the residential office district is to, quote, this is from the RO wording, the existing residential streetscape of Upper Fayette. Although the focus of the remainder of the section is on preservation of Victorian and early 20th century residents, the key motivation must not be ignored. Unlike what Mr. Weiss is saying, it's not about creating Victorian houses. It's about keeping the streetscape the way it was supposed to be. I'll continue with the quote. The detrimental effect must be measured against the desire to maintain a residential streetscape. It is clear through the permitted and conditional uses that this intent is maintained in allowing residents, offices, and small businesses with infrequent destination uses. The car dealership, a destination business, while not residential in character, does not detract from this environment in the same way a convenience store with fuel pumps would attract a constant stream of vehicles on a several-minute-long journey. There is not the same calm, passive nature that the other uses in this district allow. Alone to allow the transfer of gasoline and large refueling trucks instantaneously detracts from this intended character in a detrimental way. The infrequent starting and driving of vehicles involved in the operation of the car dealership does not present the same concerns and is far less detrimental to the welfare of the neighborhood. The movement of traffic poses a significant detriment to the safety and welfare of the surrounding neighborhood. Traffic must be carefully considered. The anticipated increase in traffic must be of such a character that it bears a substantial relation to the health and safety of the community. A prevision of the effect of such an increase in traffic must indicate that there is not only a likelihood, but a high degree of probability that it will affect the safety and health of the community, and such prevision must be based on evidence sufficient for that purpose. The protestants have met their burden. This is not an issue of merely increase in traffic. The board recognizes the applicant's testimony that the proposed use will be patronized in large part
He only gets 15
by,
minutes, too. And he only gets 15 minutes too,
That's correct. We're timing.
okay?
all right, how am I doing? In light of the importance of this, I'd ask if you give me an indulgence of a few minutes. The board recognizes the applicant's testimony that the proposed use will be patronized in large part by motorists already traveling Upper Fayette. However, this location affects the circulation and movement of traffic in a substantial way that will assuredly affect the safety and health of the neighborhood. It goes on to talk about the traffic. And it concludes, these aspects follow the intent of allowing business to operate during the day while maintaining a quiet residential character of the neighborhood and family and community time. With the dual role of residential and office, this district mostly operates in one of the roles at any given time. Office during the weekday, daytime hours, and residential in the weekday, evening, and weekend hours. This balance must not be upended. The zoning board also denied the request for a variance, indicating that the applicant itself admitted that there was another use for this property.
And Mr. DeVito, I just ask that you conclude your remarks, if you could.
All right. I want to address a few concerns that I heard from last meeting. One is the cost of the legal fees. Very simply, in all due respect to Ms. Leonard, the cost of the legal fees to the borough and everybody else will be substantially increased if you grant the text amendment. The zoning appeal is almost through. They must show, in order to upset the zoning board, a manifest error of either findings of fact or law. They're not going to find that. The zoning board has been very clear, and their reasoning was terrific. Conversely, if this, what we call a text amendment, it's really not, is allowed to go through, it will be the subject of both a Court of Common Pleas and zoning board litigation that's going to start anew, with witnesses, et cetera.
All right. Mr. DeVito, thank you.
Okay, that's
I
it.
have a few more minutes, if you don't mind.
No, that was the
can't.
time that was allotted to you. Are there any other
There's
council?
if I may, Matt, I mean, there's a lot of people here.
I understand, we discussed this prior, you were given your
About
15 minutes.
We gave him 15 minutes, that's you get. You
All right.
get
That's the
15.
decision of Borough Council, that's their prerogative in this. If there's any
Thank
other.
you, members of
Okay.
council.
Thank you, Mr. DeVito. If there's any other council representing other groups of residents, they may come forward. If not, we'll now begin individual public comment. Please come forward if you wish. You'll be given 2 minutes. Please identify yourself and your address.
Is there any public comment? Come on, come to it.
Please. We need you to state your name and your address, please.
And there is a stenographer here, so if you could please spell your last name as well so she can get the
My
spelling.
name is Mohamed Shaker, spell Chakr last name. I am the franchisee of 7-Eleven on 601 Fayette Street. I've been there since 2006. This charade, or the bullying effect I call it, started 2010. I start and I said the question is, how many customers from your register can you provide to tell going to that location? You refused to do that, and you pulled the name of Wawa, and because you were subpoenaed for that number, and you did not give it. And you refused it unto this moment to tell them how many customers. I told you at that time I have between 16 and 1,800 customers come to that 7-Eleven. And you will be, after you vacuum all of the customers from all the gas station and my place, you will be about 4,500 customer minimum. And I dare you to provide that number right now, again, from your register. The effect of the new Wawa on Ridge on me is reduction 150 customer a day. From my customer count from 1,800 a day. The effect of that on the other 7-Eleven is 350 customer a day. He has family to feed. He has 4 children in college. So his income went down by 30%. So we come to the effect of cost. if one bully is able to get in, the second bully will come. Royal Farm will come, which is beating Wawa everywhere, will come with his lawyers and come again and do another bullying effect, and we'll go through that again. So it's not stopped. Can we get also rid of those gas stations? No, that will convert those gas stations to what? Repair. The look will be worse than having gas stations. So we did not solve any problem. What we did, we create bigger problem for the future, was taking all the customers from all over and bring them to one location, in and out, and have traffic. The police department knows how many times I called for help with people not following the traffic in and out from my location.
All right.
Many
Thank
times.
you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
My name's Mary Bracciali, B as in boy, R-A-C-C-I-A-L-E. I live at 110 East 9th Avenue. My husband and I have lived in Conshohocken for 15 years. We moved here from the city. We love Conshohocken. We love its walkability. We love going to all the small restaurants and businesses. I didn't move to Conshohocken to live 2 blocks away from a Wawa with gas stations, gas pumps. It will change the fabric of Conshohocken. Do not open this door. Please say no to the text amendment and say no to Wawa and stand up to this bully. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mary Tiernan, 1016 Harry Street, Conshohocken. Town Valet is not some massive dry cleaning plant. It's limited hours. They changed to organic, so there's less environmental impact for all of us. Not like a 24/7 gas station with the massive tanks that will be built there. A cemetery in Plymouth does not make our residential area less than residential. They're resting in peace. They're not disturbing the peace like a 24/7 Wawa. The A field is not the Link or Citizens Bank. You know, it's not an area that warrants a super Wawa. It's a community area for us. It doesn't make us less residential. But I fear for what would happen if a super Wawa is put in there with the kids that are around and traffic coming and what accidents there could be. I appreciate concerns about the legal fees. We appreciate that you want to be legally or fiscally responsible, but some expenses have to be borne. And the reason that we are in this fight is because Wawa would not take no repeatedly at 28 hearings at a variety of forums. They keep trying to fit in a non-conforming use, and it shouldn't be allowed. You know, some expenses have to be borne, and this is one of it. If you cave to this developer, how do you say no to others? That gentleman mentioned Royal Farms. I don't know Sheetz. I don't know Sunoco. How do you say no to other developers? Because if you say, hey, this cost us a lot of money, we're going to cave for you guys, you can't legally sustain that and say no to others. You're going to fundamentally alter the fabric. I remember at one of the hearings, Mr. McTammany talked about how they fought back in the 60s and 70s to preserve the character of this town when developers wanted to have it wall-to-wall Wawa. And they held strong and they had a vision. And then this vision was reaffirmed by the Revitalization Committee. Don't end all the good work that so many people have done for decades to make this a desirable town, a walkable town, a livable town, a place that people are so eager to come to. Don't destroy the fabric of this town. You know, it really, it's beyond just my interest in having not that noise and 24/7 in our immediate neighborhood. It is the impact of what's going to happen for a wonderful town here. It's a hard call, but please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just moving out of the way. Brian Pieri, 226 West 9th Avenue. Also owner of Pieri Restaurant Group with 3 locations in Conshohocken. It's been like the longest dream ever, I guess, talking about this Wawa deal. Since Wawa first came to town, I've been married, I've had a child, I've moved. I think some of us have progressed into Social Security. It seemed like a heck of a bonding experience for those who have been through this with the long haul. I know a lot of times these decisions seem very tough, but maybe it's just who I am or how I was raised. I usually just bring things back to the simple points that are right in front of us. One, we take a look at the technical side, which these gentlemen are a lot smarter than I am when it comes to the legal side of zoning. But as I understand it, zoning is very simple. It's to protect people who bought a house here and not change the rules on them after the check clears. And zoning very simply says that unless the impact is similar or less, or there is a hardship, then it's a no. And I don't sit here and say, how do we go to these people who live in those neighborhoods and say there's a hardship? Because we all know, based on how this town is booming, that there will be developers lining up outside the Moore's door to pay the same or better price to develop something more in line with your plan. Two, I want to address the issue of money. One, it's going to go back to court, so the money is going to come. So again, I bring it back to what's the right thing to do. And the right thing to do is not let somebody with more money than any of us dictate how the town is going to progress. Not the threat of them having more willingness to spend and more Christmas bonuses that can go out to their legal team determine anything that we do. A check for the A field, a new fence, a new park, that does not go anywhere for me in terms of making the right decision. Those kind of things are ancillary. When we make the right decision, we also look for those things that better our town, not to swallow a bad decision. Third, and again, I'll stick with my theme of being simple. I feel like if any one of the wonderful people up here, who I know most of you very well over the years, or Ross, or Gary, had somebody try and put a gas station in your backyard so that your child or your grandchild would look out their back window in the summer and smell gasoline, see people pulling in at 2 o'clock in the morning, or hear the Eagles crowd getting ready for their tailgates at 11 a.m., all the witnesses in the world, all the experts that talk about magic traffic that disappears, none of that matters. We all have eyes. We all have ears. I stand in front of my restaurant on 9th Avenue, and when they fill up the gas stations that are diagonal down the street, I smell it. So maybe Wawa has magic non-smelling gas. But gasoline smells, and we have an open-air restaurant. And sometimes it fills the entire front room of our restaurant if that window is open. And let me tell you, the people who want restaurants and
Please
shops
conclude your remarks, if you could.
and those kind of things don't want gas stations. I'll close real quickly. I met with Bob the day before the election, just in happenstance. It wasn't a meeting. We were walking on Fayette Street. I turned, I pointed up the street, and I said, these are reminders of decisions we made when times were tough. We made this town look industrial when we didn't have the choices to do what we wanted to do. Times have changed. We should not violate our plan, our zoning, our desire. We should have leadership to be a town we want to be, not a town puppeted by people with a lot of money.
Right.
So
Thank
please
you,
say
sir.
no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jan Vaca. I live at 146 West 8th Avenue. I want to start out with a statistic. 1 minute, 34 seconds. 1 minute, 34 seconds is the time to drive from the Moore Chevrolet to the other Wawa on Ridge Pike. So are we compromising for 1 minute and 34 seconds for that convenience? So I back up and I say, I've lived here for 25 years, and I will be here next year. So for the people that can't wait a minute, 34 seconds to get their cup of coffee or whatever, you know, I will be here next year. And a minute 34 means nothing to me. But let me back up and understand, what are we doing here? I am totally lost as why we're even arguing this. What is zoning? Do you guys know what zoning is? Zoning is protecting it so that a 20-story hotel isn't built next to your house, so that a porn shop isn't built next to your house. And so that's what it's about. And what does zoning say? Zoning says, Conshohocken Borough, quote, let me start, quote, Conshohocken Borough is a developed community with an established character that should be preserved. Right out of zoning. It also says the borough should preserve and protect the character, stability, and value of land and buildings. So I just end up and say, okay, you guys have to decide tonight whether you're going to sell out to big Wawa with their big bucks or forget the minute 34 and retain Conshohocken. Thank you. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. I've got a little prop here. So this is Conshohocken at the top. This is what we are right now, and that's Brian's restaurant, where I frequent often. Thank you, Brian. And this is a Wawa at another location with a McDonald's right next to it. So right after Wawa comes in, then we get the McDonald's and the Burger King and all those other schlock restaurants, right?
Okay.
All right, thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Right? You decide what you want. But the one thing that you notice about the pictures
All
at
right,
the
ma'am,
bottom.
ma'am, your time is up.
All right, no sidewalks.
Thank you for your time. My name is Thomas McCullough Jr., MCCULLOUGH. I'm at 337 West 10th Avenue. In keeping with Brian's what is right, I just want to read a quote to you from a novelist. Start with what is right rather than what is acceptable. And in this situation, what is right is preserving our small town feeling, preserve character, keep our main street a main street, keep independently owned stores and restaurants thriving in our area. Don't let these other types of entities come in and put a strain on existing businesses with existing homeowners in the area, with existing business owners in the area. All right, it's time to do what's right, not what is acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Claire Dorsey. I live at 19 East 11th Avenue. I just want to say that I hope, once again, I'm up here to ask that you deny this amendment. Contrary to what the applicant says, I, and I'm sure most of my neighbors, do agree that our neighborhood is residential. It's a quiet, peaceful neighborhood, and I just ask that you allow it to stay that way. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Hibbard, 228 Spring Mill Avenue. I just want to ask council, before they vote on this, or if it's going to be tonight or another night, that you take some time to just look at the other side, too, of other things that can happen. I agree with everything everyone has said, but there's also the issue of an appeal process. And in this area, the Metroplex went through an appeal process, and they won. Where Wegmans is, went through all the way through the Superior Court, and they won there. And they actually have no zoning. They won with no zoning. That's why it's so overdeveloped there right now. So I don't know. I used to do this. I'm trying really hard not to get involved in or learning all this stuff. So I want to put it on you guys to do the research of how many times or what the odds are of people losing or winning in the appeal process in Pennsylvania. So if anybody can remember what the Metroplex was like, it was a beautiful, presented, walkable retail area. Everybody said no, they didn't want the trash coming up with that, they didn't want the McDonald's coming, they didn't want any of that coming, and it won in the appeal process, and we got that. Because when it goes to the appeal process, it just goes to land development. At least that's what you told me the last time I was here. I think you said that. That if they win an appeal, it goes right to land development, right?
That's correct.
I think we have to preserve our small community, we have to preserve all that, but we also have to look at the risk of what could happen if it, I'm not saying don't vote on it tonight, but really look at both sides, because it's just in this area, what happened where Wegmans is and where the Metroplex is happened in the appeal process. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Miller, M-I-L-L-E-R, 116 East 8th Avenue. I've been living in Conshohocken for 40 years now. I moved up here from Roxbury. Now, this is a beautiful community. I love it. But I see advertisements for no Wawa, no chain store. Well, you have chain stores here. Gulf stations, they're chain stores. They might be privately owned, franchised, but they're still chain stores. 7-Eleven, Southland Corporation, that's a chain store. Jimmy John's, it's a chain store. Now, you talk about you don't want chain stores. You don't want Marriott, that's a chain store. The Hilton, they're all chain stores. But you turn around and you come in, you put your signs up. People have been here for a couple of years, and you're saying you don't want this. Wawa's come into a community, they do things for the community. They give jobs for people, and they don't care. And you talk about traffic. You're going to have a hotel you want to build down here by the bridge with a restaurant and a bar, and you don't think there's going to be traffic there? And you say that they're not going to be delivering with trucks? It's a hotel. How do you think the food's coming in to be cooked? It's traffic. You're going to have it. But most of your traffic right now, you're trying to keep down that end of the bridge. You have nothing up this end that's really built. And right now, that property is also part White Marsh. It's not even all yours. And I just think you ought to think seriously about it, what's going on, and not be bullied by this community one way or the other. Think about it. I said one way or the other. This side or the
is Debbie Ellis. I live at 149 West 4th Avenue. They're not going to like what I have to say either. When the 16-story hotel went up West 1st and Washington Street, nobody was here protesting because it's not their end. We have chain hotels going up. We have chain stores. Personally think there's no reason why the Wawa shouldn't go there. If I have to live with the trucks, I have to live with the traffic, why shouldn't the other end? Can't get over that bridge now, but nobody protested. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Rhodes. I live at 1108 Fayette Street. Recent arguments in favor of accepting this proposal have been based on the idea that accepting the proposal will result in a cessation of legal fees incurred by the borough. That is simply wishful thinking. Consider these facts. Fact, Anderson's American Law of Zoning defines spot zoning as the process of singling out a small parcel of land for a use classification totally different from that of the surrounding area for the benefit of the owner of such property and to the detriment of other owners. Fact, in the case of Lancaster Development Limited versus the Village of River Forest, the courts defined spot zoning as occurring when 1, the zone was applicable to a small area, and 2, the change was out of harmony with the comprehensive plan. Fact, the amendment as written can be applied to only a single parcel of land within the RO district. Fact, the amendment is an unjustified benefit to the particular property owner, to the detriment of a general land use plan as outlined in the comprehensive plan. Fact, the developer has not demonstrated a hardship necessitating relief for that property. Based on these facts, it appears the proposal meets the qualifications of spot zoning. Now, no taxpaying resident enthusiastically supports using public funds for litigation purposes, yet protecting our citizens and enforcing the laws is the very essence of our government. In any case, given the very shaky legal ground with respect to spot zoning outlined above, it is not difficult to imagine continued legal challenges should the amendment be passed. So it would be naive to think a yes vote for this proposal will mean an end to the borough's legal expenses. One more thing to consider is the character of the proposal's applicants. They have bullied the borough with threats of legal action and consequences if they do not get what they want. They constantly distort and twist the facts to suit their purposes. Consider how they continually state the parcel in question is not in a residential area when 4 of the 6 adjacent properties in the borough are owner-occupied homes. Or in the middle of the zoning board hearings, when the applicant changed the application from a Wawa to that of a generic convenience store with gas because people interested in the true impact to the area requested store receipts and traffic data from existing Wawa stores.
Can you please conclude your remarks, sir?
Yes. Are these the actions of someone looking to partner with the borough? What is the applicant trying to hide? Why would you believe they will not continue to seek ways to skirt the rules and push the boundaries if the proposal was passed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Lisa Rhodes. I live at 1108 Fayette Street. I've been attending these hearings over the course of many, many years. And as someone who has purchased a home in the borough almost 20 years ago and raising a family across the street from the proposed applicant's proposed location, I beg you to maintain the integrity of the RO district. When somebody buys a house in this town, they expect a certain level of support and respect for the rules when they made that investment. For most of us, that house is the investment of a lifetime, and I don't want to look out of my front door and see a Wawa.
Good evening. My name is David Bertram. My address is 131 East 5th. I served the borough as a planning commissioner from 09 until 17 and was chairman in 13 when this proposal first arrived. I voted against it then and reiterated this recently in an open letter in which I spoke at length about our comprehensive plan and how it does not support this project in any way. Since some have pointed out to me that the plan is not law and maybe I should stop attempting to hang my hat on it, so to speak. Perhaps there's a better angle, but I do not think so. I know it's not law, it's a vision, our vision. Residents, volunteers, staff, planners come together to articulate where we see ourselves and where we want to go, and by extension, where we do not want to go. I really like the advertising tagline for our next plan, reflecting on the past assessing the present, planning the future. It's a very big document in many ways, in fees, no doubt, but also in the hundreds of hours given by your stakeholders who participate in its formation. Since our current plan was drafted and blessed, there have been a lot of personnel changes in the council, and it has led me to wonder, what is the relationship of this current council to our current plan? That is, to be more specific, and I am addressing this to anyone who may vote in favor of this project, if so, you are not only attempting to alter the course of our borough's physical development, but you will also be making it perfectly clear to us how well you respect our vision as it is documented. I can't help but wonder if this project is approved a few years down the road when Dunkin' Donuts is bearing down on us to rewrite our zoning ordinances, who is going to defend the latest and greatest plan that you are spearheading right now? If approved, I'll definitely be asking myself, why should I show up here again and do so? If approved, why shouldn't I just get the message? That is, this plan is really nothing more than a shallow vehicle for fetching grant money for this council, and they will do what they want regardless of our vision. If lawyer fees are an excuse to sell out the vision today, why wouldn't they do so tomorrow? Please respect our vision and its plan and vote no.
Hello, my name is Mark Hall, and I'm a resident of West 10th Avenue, Hall's Hall, 425 West 10th. I'd like to respectfully ask the council to vote no on the zoning change. I'm not someone who usually gets involved with these kinds of things, but I do feel strongly that allowing the proposed plan would be a big step in the wrong direction for the neighborhood and the borough. Approving this would set a precedent for other developers who wish to shoehorn projects into the borough that are just as equally inappropriate. It'll send a message to developers that if they have deep pockets and they're willing to threaten us with litigation, that we'll just roll over and give them what they want. The current zoning is appropriate, and there's no compelling reasons to make such drastic changes to the rules that are in place. Such changes would be tailored to suit the needs and interests of the developers and Wawa. Please use your vote tonight to show the residents of Conshohocken that their interests come first. And I just also want to say, I agree with the notion of a house being an investment of a lifetime. I lived in Plymouth Gardens behind the dry cleaning plant for 5 years. Love the neighborhood, bought into it. I love being here, and I just don't want to see all the traffic from Plymouth Gardens pushed out Maple Street when they can't make a left turn onto Fayette Street. So that's something I'm concerned about too. It's a steep hill, it's a long block, cars already fly down it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daniel Alfaro, spelled A-L-F-A-R-O. I'm at 1075, apartment 1, Colwell Lane. I moved in to this town when I got married, and at the time, when she was my fiance, we were shopping around. We're like, where are we going to move into when we get married? And we found Conshohocken, and we're like, this is perfect. We lived in the city for a little bit, but from the suburbs. And in that suburb, I lived in this house that was behind a main street, and it wasn't a super Wawa, but there was a Wawa in walking distance. And then Super Wawa came in. I was in high school. I was super excited. I was like, cool, Super Wawa, no big deal. That Wawa's still there, and it's still in my mom's backyard every time I go see her. And, you know, she complains daily about the smell. My brother and sister are much younger than me, still in high school, middle school. And as I'm renting now, and I'm married, we're looking to buy a house. I want to stay here, but I'd hate to have that backyard look again. Like I already lived through it. You know what I mean? And I just wanted to share that, because a lot of you guys have been here for a long time. I'm hoping to, but a change of scenery was part of the reason I moved. Thanks.
Michael D'Onofri, 114 West 10th Avenue, Conshohocken, obviously. That's D-E, capital N-O-L-F-I. I lived here for approximately 38 years. People in Borough Council, I went to school with your nieces, your nephews, your kids. Some of you were my coaches in sports. Some of you coached opposite teams I was on. I think I'm one of the people here that epitomize being from Conshohocken. Stand up straight, you look up tall, look at people in the eye, shake their hands, do what you're supposed to do, you know. And if I go up to my daughter's bedroom, I can see the Moore property. At one point in time, it was my bedroom. And I don't want to see a Wawa there, you know. My wife tells me if a Wawa goes there, as much as she grew up here, bounced around from Lower East Side, Upper West Side, Spring Mill Avenue. You know, she's like, I want to go out of here. She's like, I want to be gone. And I'm like, it's such a shame to make such a change like that if it does go through. You know, especially with the smoke and mirrors with the lawyers and all the just all the rhetoric that goes around with it. I mean, Conshohocken residents that oppose this or have 28 somewhat victories from Borough Council, like when going about this. How many does Procco have right now? I mean, I don't. It's your decision. You know, whether I stay after the decision is my decision. Whether I want to raise my family in this town, this borough, you know, it's just, you know, you're kind of losing your heart. You know, that's one thing I think we had a lot here. Thank you for your time. Please make the right decision.
My name's Suzanne Hill, Hill. I live at 447 Spring Mill Avenue, and I've been a resident here for exactly 6 months. And I moved here because I grew up in a small town. I loved growing up in a small town. I grew up in a town that had a cute little mall. Everything was walkable, and even in high school, I walked back and forth places. Perhaps you heard of the town I grew up in. It's called King of Prussia. And zoning changes. I've seen a lot of building developments. And putting a Wawa in that area, it's not just about Wawa. I like Wawa, they have great coffee, but not in that area. There's one at the one end of town, there's one at the other end. The gas pumps, a lot of the things that Brian and a lot of the other business owners said. People with homes, they don't just have to look at a Wawa sign. At night when they turn their lights out, they've got a fluorescent light going through their windows at all times. That's really hard to sleep. It's not fun. It's challenging, it's difficult. Also, where I frequent in the summer, there is a Wawa right across the street from us, and it is fun to watch people going in and out. What's not fun is to watch the accidents that occur going in and out of that parking lot. And we've already got massive traffic here to begin with, and Super Wawa, it's a hazard for the community. It's walkable. I see kids all the time, adults, folks walking back and forth, and it's very accident prone. So I beg you guys, make the right choice for the community. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Hi, let me see if this works. I'm Kevin Lukens from Conshohocken. I've lived 207 East 8th Avenue. I've been living here for over 60 years. I'm an old man. I've seen a lot of changes. We used to have the Rayon and the super block on Hector Street. But, okay, we have a Wawa on North Lane. And if they build this new one, we'll have 2 Wawas, with the exception of one Wawa will have a gas station. We have a couple of gas stations. We've got the Getty gas station and the Gulf station. And I don't know how much that's going to temper in their business. And I'm sure Mr. Moore, Wawa, made Mr. Moore an offer he couldn't refuse. But if this doesn't get approved, and I don't know how many hearings you're going to have until they realize it's a done deal, they don't want it, maybe Mr. Moore can sell his property to developers that can put some homes in this town here for people to live and prosper and do whatever. And I'm not going to say too much. I'd like to thank everybody for their time and the whole ball of wax.
Hello, my name's David Baker. I live at 221 East 11th Avenue. That's Baker. When I was looking for a house to move into, I've already been going to the boathouse in Conshohocken quite often. So I had already fallen in love with the town, and that's part of the reason why I picked it, was because it's a town. You're right outside of Philadelphia, but it's absolutely the best place to live. I picked 11th Avenue because there's no traffic on 11th Avenue. You know, it's a very peaceful street. You walk outside, you know, there's kids playing. It's just lovely. Then just recently, my girlfriend and I decided to move in together. She had a lovely home in Wayne, Pennsylvania, but we made the decision to sell her home and stay in Conshohocken because it's walkable. because of the atmosphere that you have built, that the borough has built. So everyone knows that if a super Wawa opens, that the traffic from Cowell, Hector, Elm, Butler, Ridge, they'll all go to that Wawa. There's no doubt. Anyone who even listened, even if you have a traffic scientist come in and say that Wawa hires, it tells you differently. You know that's not true. Anyone that's been to a super Wawa has seen those pumps full, and you're still waiting. They're huge, and you could still end up waiting for gas. Usually I wouldn't say this, but I am completely in support of you guys spending my tax dollar on stopping Wawa. Thank you.
Hello, Luciano Petruno, 1545 Butler Pike. I just want to, my wife and I have been Patruno. I remember the vision of the Wawa, I remember first came to us 7 years ago, because I remember we had our daughter, I was getting our first minivan, and we were shopping around. We went to Murray Kia initially, and it was interesting. There was an individual there with the last name Moore. Don't know who it is. I just know that was his last name. And this conversation came up about this. And at that, we were suggesting, you know what, I don't think the neighbors might be on board with this. But his response at that time was pretty much to laugh at us and say, ha, 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 of course it's going to happen. And that just stuck with me throughout this whole process, just the whole arrogance of what has happened here. I was at the initial planning board hearings, I think, in 2012 or something. They presented the exact same proposal, shot down. They go back before the council back then, shot down. They dragged this borough through 26, 27 hearings with the zoning board over the span of 2 years, shot down. File a frivolous appeal in common pleas court, which they had no chance of winning because they have no case, because there's no hardship, because clearly there are other uses for this property, which they never, ever attempted to even investigate. It can be used for many things. And bottom line, this is about maintaining the zoning integrity of the borough. And it's about fairness. And bottom line, if you were to approve this, you're basically sticking a siphon into the homes of all the residences there, sucking hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity potentially out of that home and sticking it across the street into the pockets of a millionaire property owner, multimillionaire developers, and a billion-dollar corporation at the expense of the residences. That's not appropriate, and it's also spot zoning. So there's no reason at all for us to even be here or for it to even be a consideration. Thank you.
Hi, John Giordano, 318 West 11th Avenue, right across the street from you, Bob. I'll be real short and sweet. Moved here 7 years ago. Love the town. Would never think of living anywhere else again. My son, as you know, Bob, is out there with his buddies, riding their bikes, running up and down the street, doing all those things day after day, and he loves it and we love it here. But if this Wawa goes in, in a word, it's chaos. I don't know who's been to that one over on Ridge yet, but you try getting in and out of there at rush hour in the morning or at night, it is chaos. And I'll just kind of try and leave you with that word, because I don't want chaos at the top of my block or yours, Bob. I don't want it there. Thank you.
My name is Deborah Cieslewski, and I live at 225 East Fifth Avenue. Cieslewski. That's my native white name, not my native name. But anyway, I think that we should stay away with the Wawa. We don't want it. I see what goes on in Plymouth. I lived there for 10 years. All my neighbors there on that street hate it. Why don't you guys go to Norristown? Why don't you try to build one there? Because Norristown will tell you the same thing. Get the hell out. They don't want you either. Nobody does. We don't want Wawa. Go somewhere else. Put one next to your own house. That's the bottom line. You put a Wawa in here, they're going to take this town over, and everybody's going to end up moving out. So I think they're wrong if they change the zoning, and Wawa is nothing but trouble. I could show you pictures you wouldn't even believe. So it's up to you people, but if Wawa comes in, I know I'm moving out, and several other people will move out of this town. It's not worth staying.
Hi, I'm Carol Furtak. I live at 251 Springmill Avenue. I remember when they first asked us if we wanted a Wawa in the town, and I know for a fact that there was overwhelming support of the Wawa at the time. So you're talking to people on 11th Avenue, you're talking to the neighbors that it's going to affect them the closest, but it's progress in our town, and I believe that it would be a benefit to Conshohocken. Now, nobody complained when the Getty went in on 8th Avenue. Moore Chevrolet has been there for years with cars going in and out. My fiance used to CDL drive his gas truck every night for deliveries at Moore Chevrolet. Did you ever smell the gas? I mean, the complaints about why you want it. Did you look at how they're going to make the bushes and they're going to push it all the way back? Have you seen the one in Roxborough? It's beautiful. They made a traffic light. They put it all the way back. You have to park in the back of it. We do have a new one in Plymouth, which they accepted the gas station. I just think our prices are too high here, and I think a little competition won't hurt. And I'm for it.
My name is Michael Mastrieni, local business owner, president of the local Chamber of Commerce, and borough resident at 417 West 5th Avenue. Mastrioieni. Members of Borough Council, Mayor Frost, Ms. Checo, I've addressed you many times before in my position as a community leader, but I want to emphasize the importance of my position as a resident of this borough. I bought my home here almost 12 years ago and still live in that home with my wife and 2 children. Our borough is special. Let's all take pride in that. It has the perfect community feel: low crime, thriving small businesses, great housing, many family-friendly parks and playgrounds, access to main roadways. Property values in our borough have grown to unexpected highs based on work and direction from the leadership of Borough Council, good foundation of strong homeowners, and strong community-minded business owners. We are a shining star in our county. And let's not forget, our borough is not big. We are known to be 1 square mile. To get from one side of the borough to the other, unless in rush hour traffic, takes very little time. As this relates to the current application of a 24-hour convenience store with gas pumps, we currently have easy access to the products that this proposed operation will offer in three locations they currently already occupy on the periphery of our borough. We have not flourished because of their influence within our community. Developer has made the claim that despite their already significant presence, research has shown that this location will be profitable, and it can, at the expense of other businesses. They will not breed healthy competition. They will create a monopoly. Looking forward at the future of our little town, the Comprehensive Plan Task Force was commissioned this past March to collect data and work in concert with Borough Council, specifically to review, assess, and make recommendations regarding achieving sound planning and comprehensive community goals and objectives. In this regard, the amendment in front of you has complicated this whole scenario. The narrow restrictions it imposes is not enough to prohibit overdevelopment of this residential and office district. Understanding the far-reaching implications of this amendment is of critical importance. Was this drafted by council with leaders of the borough after listening to the wants and needs of the community at large, especially from all the results of the hard work of the Comprehensive Task Force? No. Those results won't be finalized until next year.
Sir, if you could please conclude your remarks.
Yes. This amendment was created by the developer whose sole intent is to get the approval of their Wawa. No widespread studies have been done to isolate what commercial development in this district will do to surrounding residents and existing businesses alike. We live in a community where our voices should be heard to help mold the direction of our borough. I've listened to both presidents and so have you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. People make communities, not businesses. Do not let this business dictate the future of our town.
for public comment?
Good evening, I'm Chuck Hoffman, Hoffman, 1231 Fayette Street. If you're from Conshohocken, you know it as the Snowman House. So, they're coming. So anyway, you know my backyard will be facing Wawa, so you can imagine I'm against it. The signs that have been up that have said, say no to Wawa, should have said, we have said no to Wawa. What I'm up here tonight to talk about is integrity and respect. And Wawa has shown their integrity, or lack thereof. And as far as respect for the citizens of Conshohocken, they've shown none, because we have voiced our concerns, and they basically just keep trying to trample on us. The integrity I want to talk about tonight is council. If you respect the office and you respect your citizens, then this should be a unanimous vote, because the previous councils, and some of you have been on it, some not, have voted against it. So please show respect for your citizens, please show respect for your office and yourselves, and make it a unanimous vote against Wawa. Thank you.
My name is Julian Moralia. Conshohocken's my home, 78 years. I just want to, there's nothing for me to say. They have all said it, so you're not going to hear anything from me except. I'm sorry?
Sir, your address, please.
529 Fayette Street.
That's where you live?
Ross. No,
First
first place, you have
Mr.
no
Weiss, we're
right
gonna
to
give
ask
him
me
his
a
2
question,
minutes.
so please. He's taking up my time. Can I get a few seconds back?
Yes.
Thank you. In 1965, I was one of the people who was present when we drafted the original zoning ordinances. The president of council, whose name was Frank Zadroga, he remembers, I think you're the only one, Ike, that does remember, stated the following: I hope members of council will be ever alert to enforce this ordinance so that the work of all of us will not be in vain. For 50 years, these ordinances have protected, just as the last gentleman said, the people and the businesses in our town. If you vote to approve this amendment change, what you're going to do is transfer about $12,600,000 worth of business from our town to Jenkintown and to Wayne. That's where it goes. Or, I'm sorry, to Wawa. That's where it goes. And I'll use their statistics. They're going to earn somewhere between $9.1 and $9.6 billion this year. They have 720 stores. Do the math. It's $12,600,000 per store. They wouldn't be here unless they had done the studies to prove that this market there is more to take out of this market, as one of the gentlemen prior to me just said. That transfers the income of 30 different families who work in this town right now out of their pockets and into the pockets of Wawa and Provco. Wawa will probably make, according to their numbers, not mine, between $400,000 to $600,000 off of one store. One store. Provco, I'm guessing, $200,000 to $400,000 in rents, and the Moore family, as someone said, will be enhanced by about $500,000 to $700,000. If that's what you want to do, vote for it. If you have a conscience, if you believe in the integrity of your office, you'll vote no. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Katie Tagliamento, and I live at 213 East 11th Avenue. And I keep thinking about the one woman who just walked off and was talking about the bushes and the landscaping that this Wawa would have. And it just keeps reminding me of my father saying, you can put lipstick on a pig, still a pig. And I'm joking, but at the same time, I live just a couple of blocks from where this super Wawa would be. And over the past 5 years, my children have been in elementary school, middle school, and now at high school, standing on the bus stop just a couple of blocks from where this proposed super Wawa would be. And I just don't think that any of the attorneys or folks here on the council or the Moore family would be proponents of a super Wawa being just a couple blocks from where their kids wait for the bus stop, from where they ride their bikes, regularly would send my kids up to the barber shop to get a haircut or go down and get an ice cream at Scoops. This super Wawa would fundamentally change the nature of the neighborhood, and I really, really hope that the council will not reconsider, but give the same decision that they've already received over and over again. So please vote no.
Anybody else? At this time, we'll close the public comment portion. Mr. Weiss, we'll allow you a few minutes to offer any comments you may have in response.
Gary, take my seat if you like.
I'll stand over here.
This is now. This is the Moore property at 11th and Fayette Street. A little help here, George. Give me the next slide, please.
Let me just
The
lodge
more-
an objection. Sorry, Russ. This should have been part of his original presentation. He's waiting and he's sabotaging after public comment. Should be restricted, in all due respect. Certainly, he's only been giving it.
When I made my presentation, I spoke for less than 5 minutes. And I wanted to wait to hear what you all heard so that I could be responsive. Next one, George. So that I could be responsive. Next one, please. And what we heard is a characterization of this proposed use by this proposed user, Wawa, that is grossly distorted. This is a walkable Wawa. This is a Wawa. This is a Wawa that will enhance an area that is not residential. All four corners of 11th and Fayette Street have offices in each of those buildings. The building right next to this property is a 2-story facility, which is the Conshohocken Physical Therapy Facility. It was expanded. It was a converted house. The houses on the four corners of 11th and Fayette have all been converted to commercial use. On the opposite side of the cemetery is Caldwell Banker's 2-story, 2-building site for their real estate business. On the opposite side of Fayette Street is a dry cleaning plant. And whether the chemicals are organic or not, they are still chemicals. There are commercial uses all up and down Fayette Street. To think that Fayette Street, whether you are down near the bridge or you are up at the line with White Marsh or Plymouth Township, that the street itself is a residential street is a distortion. There are hair salons, there are restaurants all along Fayette Street. There are gas stations on Fayette Street. Fayette Street is a very heavily traveled street. There was a concern that the traffic that the Wawa would create would be a problem. But there was also an admission that the traffic would all be passed by, 90%. All the experts at the zoning hearing board opined and said that the amount of cars that will come to the Wawa will be 90% of what is already on Fayette Street. People are concerned that the Wawa will have a negative impact in terms of lighting. Your ordinance prohibits any light to migrate from the site. The lights have to be shielded. Your ordinance prohibits noises. We had an expert testify at the zoning hearing who did a study of a Wawa, a similar size, at a similar location, and he came back and reported that the noise that the Wawa would create would be less than the noise that's created by the traffic on Fayette Street. We have agreed to multiple conditions if the ordinance is adopted and the plan is approved. There will be limitations on deliveries that will be prohibited from 11 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. There will be limitations on access for ingress and egress from 11th Avenue. Cars coming out of the Wawa will not be able to make a left-hand turn onto 11th Avenue off of Harry Street and drive into where the residences are more densely populated along 11th Avenue where you have the big stone wall of the stadium. All the cars will have to turn right to get back to Fayette Street. The traffic will go up and down Fayette Street to get off and on of the Wawa site. George, next picture, please. There was a complaint about what the Wawa would look like and how offensive it would be. This flyer was put on cars today to bring people out to you tonight. And in this flyer, you see a picture of a Wawa that bears absolutely no resemblance to the Wawa that will be constructed if this is approved. Note that there's the sign in front, the brick pillars in front, the landscaping, the trees. Note the architectural lighting that will be on the street. George, next slide. And this streetscape will be the nicest streetscape in the entire borough, including even Borough Hall, because not only does it have a sidewalk that goes the full expanse of the property, but it has lawn, it has a grass sitting area, it has benches. Next,
Mr. Weiss, please conclude your remarks.
The site itself has features that your staff have required that include a charging station for electric cars, bike racks. People that come to Wawa to buy gas are certainly in their car. But a Wawa of this nature in this area will be a convenience store that will attract residents. I go to the Wawa in West Conshohocken where I live. I see that my police officers in there. There's a community. People talk to each other. The people that work there live in the community. It is not something that's just plopped in the middle of a area and is not a part of the fabric of the community.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weiss.
One last
conclude.
thing. I understand.
Please just conclude, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Weiss, can I see that flyer, please? Just the flyer. Can I see that?
Oh, yeah, sure. I don't know where these flyers came from. I don't know where the electric truck with the sign came from.
Put it on the screen so everybody can see it.
Can we comment on that?
No.
Public comment, sir. Another good minute.
All right, council, this time you've heard from the applicant, you've heard the public comment that has been closed at this portion. If council is inclined to act at this time, there would need to be a motion and a second.
Are we allowed to ask any questions?
We will have, once a motion has been made, there'll be an opportunity for council discussion and comment. And questions as well.
I'll make a motion to adopt the proposed amendment.
There's been a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's a motion and a second. Given that there's been a lot of presentation here, I believe it's the inclination of council to take a brief comfort break before we have council comment and discussion and questions, if that's would be appropriate at this time. So we'll recess for 5 minutes.
Might need 7. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We are now back on the record on the public hearing on the proposed text amendment. There has been a motion to approve and a second of that motion. Now would be the appropriate time for council to make any comment or questions of the applicant. So I'll open the floor for that at this time.
Okay, I would just like to say that I feel that Conshohocken Borough has been put in the middle by two opposing sides that seem to have the money to fight this endlessly. And both groups are looking out for their own self-interest. So I know that some residents will be disappointed no matter how we vote tonight. So we must vote for the greater good of the community.
Well, like I said, I voted against this thing when it first started. We sent our planning and our zoning, and they go through 28 meetings and they come up with a no. And before we even take the vote, I want to tell you, I'm against it, so you can go on with your vote.
Yeah. I just have one question. I have heard that when you open a super Wawa and there is a local Wawa near it, that you close them down within 18 months. And if so, and if you do that, we have all that traffic to look forward to that goes to that other Wawa. So.
Would you like Mr. Weiss to address that? Or?
Yeah.
Mr. Weiss, if you could briefly address her question.
Do you indeed do that?
I cannot say that we do or we don't. I can only say that
Give him a chance.
I can only say that Wawa's position in our relationship, and please recall that I represent the developers, has always been that they're not opening this location to close the other two, that they have every intention to keep those. But other locations can run out of lease time. The landlords could want more rent and make it unprofitable. There's any number of reasons why a store may close. But Wawa has always told us, and I've always told you and everyone else, that their plan is not to close the other stores if this store gets opened. In addition, this location has gas and the others do not. So whoever's going to come to this location is coming for more than just a convenience store. They could also come to get fuel, but it's going to be a newer store. So, I can't tell you how that will play out.
Thank you.
One question. You had said, and that might have been in error, and this is relative to the truck deliveries. I think you said that it would be, there would be no deliveries between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Wasn't that changed to 7 a.m.?
Yeah, that's our ordinance.
There's a note on the plan, and if my recollection's incorrect, I apologize. But I know it's from late at night till early in the morning. If I'm off by an hour, then I stand corrected. It's whatever the plan says. I don't remember.
Okay, thank you. I do have a few comments. Many residents of Conshohocken, both...
Turn your microphone on.
Many residents of Conshohocken, both homeowners and renters, have chosen to live here in the borough of Conshohocken for many different reasons. Much of what we've heard all night long. In fact, I did a count, and of those that spoke up, roughly I have 28 people that spoke, and 1, 2, 3 that were in favor, 1 that was basically no position, and the balance opposed the development. I think that is a real indicator of what the people, the residents, the constituents of the borough would like. This is what they want. This is representative of that. In all of the different meetings, how many different hearings, it was those opposed that attended those meetings. It's been overwhelmingly that way. So for me, I am making my vote based on what I believe is right, based on living here as a resident myself, having a family, and knowing what this community wants. I have concerns with safety, and you can look at studies that will indicate what happens around a convenience store, in particular, a 24/7 operation. So we can look at criminal mischief, we can certainly look at accidents, robberies, disturbances, noise complaints, etc. This is also something that doesn't meet our comprehensive plan. It's not in line with that. What may change moving forward, but it does not at this time. I know that there's many that have said, well, a Wawa is much better than the current eyesore. And it is an eyesore. But that doesn't mean there wouldn't be other opportunities. There wasn't a chance for it. Had there been a different arrangement, maybe there would be, and I'm quite sure that there would be other alternatives in keeping with the neighborhood. Certainly has an impact on our small businesses, and our small businesses is what makes us a community. That is what makes us walkable and the tight-knit. That is what makes Conshohocken, and that is why many of you have stayed here and many of you have come here. As far as the sale of alcohol, that's not much of a discussion for this evening, but I think it is a future concern. The sale of alcohol those laws have relaxed over time and in different states. So right now, while it is the state law that determines, and at this point, the description of that Wawa or what's being proposed does not meet that, that could be relaxed as well. So I do have a concern. I think this is a challenge because it is going to be a legal issue and it's going to continue one way or the other. So if that's the case, then I think we need and should vote and make the responsible decision to vote no. My vote and the vote of the majority of Conshohocken will be no.
I have a comment. The 7 individuals that sit here in front of you have been elected to represent the voice of the residents in our community. Each of us come at this from a different perspective based on our own life experiences, history, and stories shared over the years. We choose to take this responsibility because we are deeply committed to our community. What we do is an act of service to the public, not just to those who share our views or those who voted us in to represent specific needs or agendas. We work for the community as part of a team to establish a shared vision for the future and develop plans and framework to make the future possible. In this role, it's important that we rise above the fray, reach beyond our comfort zones, and work with others to whom we have significant differences. To the business community, I'd like to say, do not let the vote tonight, whichever way it goes, cause a deeper divide. We should use the momentum created by this project as a gift and commit to building on the dialogue and information passionately exchanged over the last 6 months. Your contribution to our community is nothing less than stellar. We are a vibrant community with individuals who possess the desire to grow and transform the landscape
to meet the needs of our residents. I spent many sleepless nights going through each message that I received from countless residents, business owners, and community leaders. I've worked very hard to keep emotions out of this important community decision so that I could look at various sides of the argument objectively. The vote I'm about to cast does not come from coercion of greedy developers, not from folding under pressure, and not from personal gain or a lack of vision for our future. The decision is one of thoughtful contemplation and strategic vision for our community. Although not born here, I've lived the entirety of my adult life here. I've created a family, and I've worked very hard over the last 2 years toward enhancing our sense of community. I have no intention of going anywhere, so the decisions that I make as an elected official not only impact you, the residents, you, the business owners, and you, my friends, but also myself and my family. I was elected to represent and project the voice of approximately 8,200 residents. Less than 5% of the community have raised concern in a public venue. The residents who do not partake in social media communications, those who shy away from controversy, or those who choose not to express their desires openly, do have a voice. And that voice I represent. Thank you.
Is there any additional comment from Borough Council?
I do. As a council person for Conshohocken, I feel my responsibilities are very clear. When I make any and all decisions that go before council, I must first put aside my own personal feelings and opinions. I must also not consider those opinions of my family and friends. I would thank my family members that this decision could affect on a professional level for respecting my responsibilities and never trying not only to influence my decision, but never even broached this subject. I can also never be swayed or bullied by any one person or group regarding my decisions. Myself and other council members have sadly repeatedly had our character and reputations attacked by some prominent business owners in this matter. With that being said, I must also put this aside and listen without prejudice to all sides. I must always put the needs and wants of all the residents in my ward, in the borough, and the businesses first. I have done my due diligence in the last few months regarding this for all sides. There is nothing easy about this decision for me, as this affects my ward the most. It would be easy if I could only take the consideration of those most concerned and affected by this. But my decision and my responsibility tonight and in all future decisions must be for all of the residents of my ward and the borough. Thank you.
Okay. I walked in this town 40 years ago, and I walked across the bridge, and I came here, and if anybody reads the Inquirer, I came from Kensington. You read it in the paper every morning about the heroin and the horrible neighborhood it is. And it's when I came to this town from Kensington, I wanted a new life. And I came up to Fayette Street. The stores were boarded up. And it was just worse, almost worse than the neighbor I came from. So I said to myself, and most people get involved in politics because they have an agenda. And I had an agenda. I wanted to make this town, and not my town, that was a good town at one time. They had small clothes stores on Kensington Avenue. It was a great neighborhood. It was thriving. But you know what happened? The factories died. Everything died. There was no more work for people. So the neighborhood went down, okay? So when I came to Conshohocken, I followed Jerry McTammany's lead. And Jerry McTammany built this town. And you don't build a town without development. You can't build a town. Go to some of these little towns that don't have any development. They're starving. They're starving. And people are here. Some people have been here for 40 years. You're shaking your head. Yes, they are. Some people have been here for 40 years. Some people have been here for 2 years. You don't know the kind of money we have to put out for the underground tunnels. Does people know we have tunnels in this town? Do you get too trash picked? And I'm not picking on anybody. I'm really not. I just want to explain that why I'm going to vote yes. I am voting yes. And a lot of people are going to be, they're going to be disappointed, but half of the people in here want it also.
Tech jobs on the river is a development in this town now.
What's that?
The tech jobs on the river is a development in this town now.
Can I
That's
finish?
what drives the economy in this town
Can I
now.
finish?
Open for public comment.
Have a conversation with
Thank you.
I started, you know what? I started the impact fee in this town, okay? You know what the impact fee is?
No, I don't.
Well, let me explain it to you. The impact fee does stuff like this. It builds your playgrounds. It builds your roads. It's an impact fee that we put a tax on every house. Every building that gets built in here, we get money back to put into our children, into our
You're
parks.
going to stick a giant gas station with gas.
There's all gas stations all over the place.
Whoa,
If you count-
whoa.
This
You ain't gonna
is
hear full
council
argument.
comment discussions, not arguments with anybody. Please,
Okay.
Thank you.
Cut it off.
Bob.
And you need this development, you need, and you know what? And listen, yous all have your opinions, but there's a lot of other opinions in this town. There's only 100 people, 150 people in this room. I walked it. I walked the Wawas. I went to the Ridge Wawa. I walked the Moore property. And I went to, during the election, I asked my people. You know how many people asked me about the Wawa at my polls? How many people asked me about the Wawa? Maybe about 3. You know what they were yelling at me? Oh, you're for Trump. You're for Trump. But nobody asked me for the Wawa. I went around, I talked to people. I talked to many people. And they, and the older people, the 80-year-old people in this town, they want to be able to walk up to someplace and get a quart of milk and have a cup of coffee because they don't have cars and fruit. Okay?
Okay.
So,
Okay, Bob.
Let's move on. Let's,
Take your vote.
yep.
I think at this point,
Cut it off. Take
Is
your
there any
vote.
more comments from council at this point? Any more comments at all? All right.
there'll be a roll call. If there's no other comments, I think it's appropriate. There's a motion and a second to approve the resolution. There'll be a roll call vote.
Mr. President, roll call.
Yes, roll call.
Councilmember Sokolowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Barton.
No.
Councilmember Flanagan.
Yes.
Councilmember Stokely.
yes.
Councilmember Leonard.
Yes.
Vice President Tutino.
No.
President Griffin.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you.
We'll take a 1-minute break before we go to the next portion of the
Okay.
agenda this afternoon.
Horrible job.
Should all be ashamed.
Council, the next item on your agenda is consideration of the preliminary final land development plans that have been filed by Provco Pineville Fayette LP. We'll follow a similar process as we had for the ordinance amendment. We'll let the applicant do a presentation and then go into public comment. We'll follow the same process with council being given the 15 minutes and then 2-minute public comment following that. These plans have been reviewed by the Borough Planning Commission and also your staff and consultants who are here this evening to answer any questions you may have. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Weiss for his presentation of the plans.
Mr. McHugh, may I make a point of, could you provide, my name's Stephen Pock, I'm going to handle this portion for people who are going to raise some issues on the land development aspect of this matter, but could I have copies of the plan reviews that you have marked as exhibits, and all your exhibits right now that you've marked in the prior hearing that are also going to play into this matter?
There's no exhibits being marked into this hearing.
But you marked exhibits that were the Planning Commission's review in the prior hearing that the board had on the text amendment. Can you provide me with those right now?
No, I can't. I don't have extra copies.
Can I look at your copies that you have?
You can when we refer to, when it's up to your time in public comment. I'll certainly make those available to you.
But you're refusing to let me see them now?
You know what the recommendation is. Mr. Weiss is going to proceed with his application.
Also, I'm going to raise an objection before you get started.
Pop, this isn't a public hearing in the context. This is a consideration of preliminary final land development plans. You don't have party status. It's not a zoning hearing. The applicant is presenting his plan.
Understood. I was the chairman of my own planning commission for 6 years in my township in Lower Moreland. But
we're going to
there is a point. There is a point.
We're going to proceed with Mr. Weiss's.
There is a point that could save you a lot of time. That says
you can make it during
in your ordinance. You're not supposed to hear any applications that don't conform to the use regulations of the zoning district prior to submission for consideration. You have not submitted this to the Planning Commission for preliminary review or final review prior to its approval.
You can make that point during public comment.
So this should go back. I think this goes to the very heart of whether you should even
Okay, you can make that
application
comment during
tonight.
public comment. Mr. Weiss, if you want to proceed with your application.
Thank you. Just to respond to that point, the plan was reviewed by both planning commissions. When I appeared before your planning commission to discuss the ordinance, we also discussed the plan. All of your consultants were present at that meeting. They had reviews, and the reviews were discussed. Tonight, we see the existing Moore site at 11th and Fayette. Next. And members of the board, I've given you all copies of these exhibits. This is the land development plan. It's a little busy. George, please go to the next slide. This is a colored up version of the land development plan. George, the next slide. This is an aerial colored version that is more descriptive and more understandable, I believe, members of council. You see the convenience store approximately in the center towards the back of the property, the frontage on Fayette Street. You should all recall that right now Fayette Street in the front of the Moore property is one long driveway. As a result of this project, we will have two driveways. The one to the left on this plan is a right-in, right-out. Is a full-service driveway. The one towards the center of the plan, closest to 11th Avenue, is a right-in, right-out. The driveways and the traffic improvements have been submitted to PennDOT. They're subject to the issuance of a highway occupancy permit, but the plan has been reviewed several times by PennDOT. And in support of that, McMahon and Associates did submit a traffic impact study that has been reviewed by your staff and your engineers. You see the sidewalk on the front of Fayette Street and the sitting area and all of the landscaping. The next structure moving back is the canopy with the fueling positions, followed behind it by the actual convenience store. The parking is dispersed on the property. We are in full compliance with the parking requirements of the ordinance. The parking to the left is partially in White Marsh Township, but what is in White Marsh Township on the proposed plan is what is in White Marsh Township now. We have not put anything in White Marsh Township that is not already there. In the back of the property, you see another landscaped area behind which is the Harry Street parking lot that will be installed by my client, dedicated to the borough for parking for the stadium. To the right of that is the back driveway to get from the property onto the existing open portion of Harry Street. And if you look to your right as you would drive out in front of the stadium on your left, you can see that Harry Street at the intersection with 11th Avenue has an island in it in order to restrict turning movements off of Harry Street to be right turn only, to prohibit cars from going to the left down Fayette Street. This plan also identifies the location of the bike rack. That's item number 8 at the right front of the convenience market. The pattern sidewalks, the decorative pedestrian street walk lighting that we had seen in the elevations. The plan is in full compliance with the ordinance that you just adopted, and it does not need any zoning relief, and there are notes on the plan to prohibit and to be compliant with what is in the zoning ordinance. The next slide is the frontage as you come down Fayette Street into the borough. It's from the Plymouth side, and you can see the signage. We're not seeking any zoning relief for any of the signage. The signage is compliant with the new ordinance, and the materials and the treatment will be as depicted on this elevation, mostly brick. Next, this elevation is a little closer up and shows you the Welcome to Conshohocken sign. That's an issue that we have to discuss. The Welcome to Conshohocken sign is on our property, but your zoning officer points out that it's a second sign. With all respect, it's a second sign, but not a project sign. One way to deal with that is to recognize that it's not a sign as the zoning ordinance would contemplate it, and it's an identification sign for the borough and would therefore be exempt. The reason that it is on our property is we will be responsible for its perpetual maintenance. That will not be a borough obligation. The Wawa sign is the sign that is electrified, but there is a condition in the review, in Chris Stetler's review, that the only portion of that sign that will move will be the prices for the gasoline. The next slide, George. This is a close-up aerial of the seating area. These are amenity features much the same as the parking lot is at the back of the property. This is obviously makes this very walkable, a dramatic and vast improvement over what the current situation is by providing not only sidewalks but also a pretty nice seating area. The next slide is another view from street level of the frontage, and you can get a sense of how the street light, the trees, the shrubs, and the brick wall and columns pretty much mute the impact of the gas pumps. There were multiple reviews prepared by your staff. We had submitted a plan, it was reviewed, and we had all those reviews 2 months ago, and as a result of those reviews and communications with various members of your staff, we prepared a revised plan. The revised plan was submitted in October, and that is what's before you tonight. The first review is dated November 7th, and it's by Paul Hughes, the Director of Engineering, Licenses and Inspections for the Borough. He identifies a series of items all of which we will comply. We don't have any questions, and we're not asking for any change to any of those items. The next review is Chris Stetler's review, your zoning officer, and her review is dated November 1st, 2017, and there are multiple conditions. We will comply with all the conditions that require any revisions to the plan. Chris points out a number of things in her review, none of which we have a problem with to the extent they are conditions of the approval. Gilmore and Associates reviewed the civil engineering, and that review is dated November 8th. There are some remaining items to be cleaned up on the plan as a result of the last revised plan, and that was prepared by Karen McNair, and she's here tonight as well, and we will comply with all of those comments. Lastly, Pannoni, Brian Cavini is here from Pannoni. His review is dated November 8th. He reviewed our traffic impact study. He reviewed improvements that we were asked to consider and contribute to for the intersection at 11th and Fayette. And will comply with all of his comments, and I believe in an approval resolution that you will consider later that there's a condition that we will make a donation of $75,000 to the borough for the borough to use towards the improvements to be made at 11th and Fayette Street. That gives you the flexibility to utilize the money as you best see fit for the improvements at 11th and Fayette Street. And again, we will comply with all of Brian's review comments. I have our traffic engineer here, our civil engineer, in case you have any questions of them. But other than that, once you hear from them, from your consultants, I would ask that you act to approve the preliminary final plan subject to the conditions that will require compliance with these various review letters. I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
So I see that you reduced the pumps from 6 down to 5 from when we started. So you reduced the number.
There's 5 islands, and there's 2 pumps on each island.
So it's my understanding there is 10
Two positions on each island.
Okay. And in those pumps, how many are considered diesel pumps?
Each position would have a diesel pump.
Okay, so we had conversations about only one of those pumps being diesel, so I would like to go back to those notes just to make sure that we understand what we're providing there, that's all.
I don't recall that.
Okay, and then the diesel pump is, from my understanding, a low-volume diesel pump where it is for smaller diesel vehicles, so tractor trailers.
Yes.
It is not the type of diesel pump that tractor trailers
Yes, correct.
utilize.
Correct.
One more question. Is the streetscape also perpetual care?
Yes.
From Wawa?
Does council have any questions of the applicant or of any of your professionals at this time?
I'm not sure if I understand for the gas pumps. Or not.
Ross, I think there's a question for you, council.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear. So on the gas pumps, there will be 5 with the 5 stations with 2 gas pumps at each. And then each gas pump will include diesel or?
Yes.
Okay. And then when you say that it wouldn't be for tractor trailer, I'm not sure that I know the difference. So the diesel that you're describing, what types of vehicles or truck or?
This is Joe Barron from Bowler Engineering. Joe, would you answer that question?
Sure. The diesel is for, there are a number of cars that use diesel. and it would be for those types of vehicles. It's not for tractor trailers. Tractor trailers use a type of diesel when they fuel up that there was the question about the high volume. It would have to have the ability to pump at a high volume for them to be able to use it. But this is not to accommodate tractor trailers. It's just for there's a number of diesel type fueled vehicles right now that are on the roads.
So is there also environmental advantages to the diesel that will be used in these? Is there any other difference? Like, is there an environmental advantage?
Well, there are some that believe that diesel is more environmentally friendly, and there are other people that don't agree with that. We also have, as we're seeing, more and more cars that are either hybrids or fully electric. That's why your staff required that we put an electric charging station in, which we have done. And I think we're all in to see how this evolves in terms of electric vehicles versus gas vehicles. We know what we hear from what China wants to do and what all the companies are doing. So the diesel fuel is just typical for what a diesel-fueled automobile would require.
Okay, all right, thank you.
There was one thing I did not mention, because I expect that they'll be covered by your engineers or your consultants. There are a number of waivers that are required. I will not go through them because I expect that the staff will go through them with you and explain each of the waivers for your consideration.
Ross, I do have one question. When you were doing your traffic study, did your person that did this study take into consideration that Fayette Street has no turn lane? In other words, coming from North Lane, the traffic would basically back up in order to turn into the Wawa because there is no turn lane there?
Yes, Casey Moore did evaluate that issue. We looked into, Casey, would you come up? Casey's from McMahon and Associates. And Casey, would you please explain to everybody how you analyzed or evaluated turning lanes going south on Fayette Street?
Certainly. Casey Moore, McMahon Associates. We did evaluate the left turning traffic from the 4 lanes of roadway. And actually, it was a comment that was actually brought up through staff asking about that. It was a discussion also that we had with PennDOT. In order to provide a turn, first of all, the analysis shows that you did not need the turn lane because it operates as a de facto left turn lane at many intersections throughout Conshohocken and even for this site.
What do you mean a de facto
So
turn lane?
when I say de facto, you can use the inside lane or the outside lane to travel north and south on Fayette Street. When cars turn left from the inside lane, cars will have another lane to move by them, and there's sufficient capacity for them to do that, especially at the north end of Fayette Street. This was reviewed both by PennDOT and the borough staff and consultants. One of the things that we also considered in those comments was if we were to provide a left turn lane, how could you provide that? You would have to restripe Fayette Street in order to do that, and there's parking all along the other side. So you'd have to eliminate all parking on the west side of Fayette Street, not only north of 11th Avenue, but south of 11th Avenue as you transition that back to provide the left turn lane. So there was a consideration also given to that. But the bottom line was that from a functionality standpoint, you did not need to have the left turn lane, and that was concurred with by all the reviewers.
And you looked at that in comparison to Butler, that has a turn lane? And you've kind of taken it from there? Or did you just use our site?
I used the traffic on the road at our site and the turning movements that would go in and out, and based on the number of driveways and all those things in consideration. You can't compare apples to apples,
I
one site
realize
to
that.
another.
I'm just trying to get a handle.
Ross, comment on the question. The way your pumps are laid out, I don't think you could get a tractor trailer in there anyway.
No.
If you got them in, you couldn't get them out. Where do you propose the electric station over there?
for the electric car?
The electric station was moved to the White Marsh side of the property. There's a condition in the review letter, I believe it's Paul Hughes's review letter, that also requires that the air pump be relocated away from the residential. We're exploring putting the charger and the air pump at the back of the property, or to put it on the White Marsh side of the building or where the parking spaces are. But they will not, neither will be adjacent to the residential side on the 11th Avenue side of the property.
So there will be just one electric?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how long does it take a car to charge?
I think it depends on where the battery is.
Okay.
And Casey?
Yeah, I'm not an expert on this, but if it's fully drained or near drained, I mean, it could take 8 to 10 hours to charge, usually overnight. But if somebody's pulling in on a partial charge and they're in grabbing a sandwich and doing whatever they need to do, they could get a charge for, the 20 to 30 minutes that they might be on the property.
Okay. And if we think that's, we're going in the direction, would it make sense, or is adding a second or a third something that could easily be done in the future?
If in the future, if it turns out that that's what the customers would like and that it would be helpful, I'm sure that Wawa would do anything to make the customers comfortable. I mean, I've gone to some municipal buildings and they have 3 or 4 charging stations. I've been to others, they have 1. And I think this is something that's evolving. Your staff had the foresight to say, let's put a charging station in there, at least make one available, and then we'll see what happens.
We have one here.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Mr. Weiss, considering that you indicated that you're going to be a will comply on the review letters, I don't know that we're going to go through individually each consultant. Therefore, it might make sense for you to go through the waivers or have your engineer go through the waivers, and then we can ask the staff consultants to individually comment on those.
That's fine. Joe Barron, would you go through the waivers? And which plan would you like up to talk about the waivers, if you need a plan at all?
I mean, this plan's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
There are 6 total waivers that we're requesting. First is a waiver from section 22-302 to permit only one submission for preliminary and final approval, so to get a preliminary/final approval, as opposed to having them separate. The second waiver is a waiver from section 22-306A1 to not provide existing features within 100 feet of the subject property. We provided in our plan set an aerial photograph to show the area and the uses and the owner information, et cetera, within the 100-foot boundary. So it's a common waiver to substitute actual survey of the area with the aerial showing those features. The third one, a waiver from section 22-404-2B to allow driveways greater than 25 feet in width. The proposed driveway widths are consistent with the proposed, with the zoning ordinance text amendment that was adopted. So that's the reason for that waiver.
Joe, which driveways are you referring to?
The driveways greater than 25 feet in width would be the 2 on Fayette Street because of the nature of the right-in, right-out, and the width required for that driveway, and then with the median in the middle of the driveway that is furthest from the intersection, the full movement driveway on Fayette Street. The next one is a waiver from section 22-4042F to provide more than 2 driveways on a single property. With the 2 street frontages, the total of we have the 3 proposed driveways, and that's also something that complies with the text amendment that was adopted. And then a waiver from section 22-4092 to permit grading within 3 feet of the property and rights-of-way lines. In order to provide the necessary grading within the proposed development, we're grading up to and including the right-of-way line in order to be able to implement the driveways and the improvements there. Likewise, to be able to provide, the sidewalk along the property lines on the sides of the property. So we're going to be within 3 feet of the property line. We're not going over the property line, but certainly we're getting close enough that we would need that waiver. And then a waiver from section 22-4104A to permit high-density polyethylene or HDPE storm sewer pipe material and pipe size smaller than 18 inches. We are proposing that in, it's common for proposed storm sewer on site to be HDPE pipe. It's more common than it is to have any type of concrete pipe on site. So that may be a preference sometimes within road rights of way, but certainly when it comes to developed sites, HDPE is the more popular option for a number of different reasons. And then with the pipe size, we're tying into, our underground detention basin is tying into a 12-inch pipe on Fayette Street. So it doesn't make sense to have a larger pipe than tie into a smaller pipe, especially if the pipe is adequate to carry the flows in it. So from our detention basin across Fayette Street to the inlet that we're tying into across on the other side of Fayette Street, we have a 12-inch pipe as opposed to an 18-inch pipe, and then there's one area on site where there's a small pipe run where we have a 15-inch pipe instead of an 18-inch pipe, which, once again, sufficient to carry the flow that's in it, but that particular pipe is crossing a number of utilities that are feeding into the site, and because of that crossing and getting the proper cover on the pipe, that's why it's a 15-inch pipe.
Joe, in the reviews and your conversations with the borough's consultants, was there any objection to any of these waivers?
No, there was not.
In your opinion, are these waivers something that are somewhat typical and you've had them elsewhere be granted?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Then I'll just ask if Paul or Karen, do you have any comments on the requested waivers?
No, the staff doesn't have any objections to the waiver.
Are there any other comments or questions for the applicant from council? At this point, I think we can then move on to the public comment portion. We'll again allot 15 minutes of time to council representing multiple residents of the borough. I assume Mr. Pollock will be using his 15 minutes at this time.
Kevin, you're good where you're at. We can hear you from there.
Oh, all right. I got a question about the traffic flow.
Sir, hold on. We're gonna have public comment from council first, and then we'll get to individual. It's okay.
I have no problem with this gentleman. I don't want to keep a citizen from expressing a viewpoint,
We'll certainly allow everyone their time. At your request, you've asked for additional time, so we're going to allow you to have the 15 minutes here.
President Griffin, members of the Borough Council, Stephen Pollock on behalf of some near neighbors, Claire Dorsey and Lisa Rhodes, especially, who were, I guess, plaintiffs or the intervening appellees in the zoning case, which I hope, if one of the conditions that you've agreed to is that they're going to withdraw their zoning appeal. If they haven't, you better get that condition, because that's still out there. However, let me say this. One of the things that as I said preliminarily when we were trying to go back and forth, and Mr. McHugh said kindly I would have my time, is that here we are. All right, you've done what you were going to do, and you acted as you said. You took the vote as you saw fit for this municipality. Why are you going to rush tonight on the very technical issues that will allow this to be, to follow your vote, which is to make this the best property and development you can have? Because you're going to have to nail down all these will complies. You're going to have to nail down all of these things that are saying this is going to be in perpetuity. This is a fund that we're going to give you. I mean, I don't know if that's an impact fee that you talk about, Mr. Stokely. I don't know if that's in your ordinance. I don't know what the $75,000 amounts to, in a sense. But these are things that they're not concessions unless they're going to be part of something that is a formal agreement. Hopefully you'll put that. I guess you'll put that in your development agreement. But unless you spell that out and you have a full-blown resolution and everything, you're not going to really have a sense of what you have to do. And here you are tonight, having passed something, and now you're rushing to do the land development part. You've decided the political text amendment, if it is a text amendment or if maybe something else, you've decided that issue. But why do you have to rush tonight on these things that were stormwater management? Maybe your staff is saying is, I didn't bring him tonight but I have a report that I'll hand up from a traffic engineer, Joseph Fiacco. Joseph has sealed it. You can look at it, and instead of reading to you, he has 3 pages of conclusions that raise deficiencies in the Moore report. Our whole zoning hearing was raising deficiencies in the Moore report, but that was a different maybe issue. Now you're talking about, do you need a turn lane? Do you need a decel lane? Do you need to impose those kinds of things? Maybe you should have your own traffic engineer report. But, you know, you've got to be able to look at these things logically instead of rushing tonight to do that. But here's one of the big things that I want to point out just from a technical point of view right now. The saldo specifically seems to provide at 22.308, it's plan processing procedures. These are your procedures. All applications must conform to the use regulations of the zoning district prior to submission for consideration. When does this become consideration? Well, first of all, let me point out, as I read Section 4, unless the ordinance that you just passed, text amendment is changed, text amendment says, the provisions of this ordinance shall be effective in 5 business days after its adoption. So if it's adopted tonight, it's still not in effect. They're not in compliance with the use regulations as they stand tonight. What's your rush? Well, the rush I'm concerned about is that I've heard comments that said, well, Mr. Weiss, you said you were going to have only 1 diesel when we were discussing it. Well, guess what? That implicates that there were discussions way before this was happening with borough council members, with borough staff, that it was already planned out what this was going to look like and how it was going to be. That may be something for another forum. Maybe that almost sounds like contract zoning, but we won't get into that right now. But look at your ordinance. Look at the plain language of your ordinance. You cannot have it submitted to you for consideration until it meets the zoning requirements. You did your work tonight. They're going to meet their requirements, but they don't have to meet. You can't do it tonight because this isn't effective for 5 business days. It's not effective tonight. They're submitting this for consideration not only by you, but the Planning Commission hasn't seen it as it now stands, because the Planning Commission, when they voted, I was there, they voted no on the text amendment. Okay? The Planning Commission hasn't really looked at this to vet it. And again, let me go back to your procedures. Your procedures are that at 22.308, all plans, and they've asked for a waiver. They've asked for a waiver to take what they're claiming is a 40,000 square foot lot, and they're trying to combine preliminary approval where it gets vetted, it gets looked at. Maybe they're going to say, look, everybody's looked at it, everybody's vetted it, we're all hunky-dory with this. But again, you haven't complied with your procedures. You pass this tonight, I can tell you that I've got a procedural claim against you because you haven't followed your ordinance. So, I mean, if I was Mr. Weiss, I might want you to at least schedule me for the next hearing at least on this one. However, it's sketch plan, minor subdivision plan may be submitted in satisfaction of a preliminary and final plan requirements for all applicable subdivisions, preliminary plan, and then a final plan. So all plans filed for approval shall be submitted in the following order. I'm reading this from your ordinance. Okay? So again, I'm saying technically the ordinance says sketch plan. A lot of places say sketch plan's optional. You're saying sketch plan. Then you're saying minor subdivision plan does anticipate that you could do preliminary and final together, but not for something that's this big, not that something that's this important. I mean, at the time, and he wasn't allowed to be an appellee because Augie DeMedio was too sick to make it to court that day, but Augie lives right here. And Augie property goes all the way back to Harry Street. And Augie's got a garage where the cars can park, where there's garages on Moore Motors. If you went to their existing photo, And that's all going to get knocked down. They haven't done anything for buffering, landscaping for Augie, or done anything that, and they're going to take all this traffic and go out past Augie in this backside. And that is something that's, somebody has to look at. They're offering you an improvement that's off-site. I don't know if your ordinance allows that. They're asking for an off-site improvement at 11th and Harry. Now, you graciously have given them an amendment tonight, but what about Harry Street? I guess there was a big battle. I don't know, are they giving you back something you already had? But here's the real issue. Here's another issue, and I'll hand up before I leave, I'll hand in the report of Joseph Flacco. But one of the biggest contentions we had preliminarily before the zoning board was, and if I may approach, this was a plan that we presented at the zoning board hearing. It was Rick Rose's plan.
I'm going to object to this. This has nothing to do with the plan that you have in front of you.
Has plenty to do with the plan.
I have answers to the points that Steve has made. He's obviously been a couple steps behind what's been going on. He was not at the planning commission meeting. I don't know that he's ever looked at the plans that have been submitted.
You want me to just give you staff and you'll hand it out to the...
But this particular plan from the zoning hearing has nothing to do with that.
Oh, yes, it does.
Mr. Weiss,
If I may be able to
I know
reflect.
your objection. This isn't an evidentiary hearing. This isn't being admitted into the record. Allow Mr. Pollack to pass it out and refer to it during his public comment. The relevance of it will be decided by council in making their decision here.
Okay, here's the relevance. The relevance is this. In the new text amendment, section 5B, 1 says that the minimum lot width shall be 250 feet on a state highway. Okay, here's the issue. You go to, this is a map that was created by an engineer, Nick Rose, used the testimony, but there's 12th Avenue. This is not in any chain of title of the Moors. 12th Avenue, if you go, I didn't bring the tax maps with me. If you look at it, 12th Avenue still exists on the tax maps of the county, Montgomery County. So I say to you that there's a real issue as to whether or not 12th Avenue exists and whether they have ownership, because there's nothing ever in their deeds, and that's why it's a 5 premises part. That's why you see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is really over in White Marsh. But there's 20 feet that they don't have, we think, and that they've been using and never even paying taxes on it. So the question is, they may not even be in compliance with the ordinance that you just passed because they're at 200, they're not at 250 feet along a state highway, because as we say, we say to you that the railroad runs through the middle of the town. There's this 20-foot strip about where maybe one of these, us to this side of the building, probably gets one of the gas dispensing units, and that's where that comes into. And as I said, it's something your solicitor at the zoning board hearing, special counsel, was concerned about at the time, John DiPietro. It's something that I think Mr. Savona or whoever represents the borough ought to take a look at. Because as I said, if you look at that, if you look at the tax maps, that 20 feet they've been getting 20 feet without paying taxes, if that's the case. That's our point on that, and that's what we meant. So therefore, we feel that there are a couple things going on here. The waiver, as I say it, the waiver is not something that's ordinarily granted to give preliminary and final on a project where there's stormwater, new impervious ground cover, things of that nature. That's not something that goes preliminary and final in one fell swoop. That's something that you really want to take a look at, because now that this is going to be the gateway to your community, you've got to make sure that it doesn't flood out Augie D'Amedio. It doesn't flood out Ernie Martinelli, who's at the corner. It doesn't flood out Harry Street and everything of that nature. And so I think that, one, that's a waiver that you should not even grant. The other thing is, I think that, as I said, 22-308 also has that provision that you have to be not need any variances, and that's when submitting a plan for consideration, the applicant must provide evidence that all necessary variances have been granted by the zoning hearing board. He will say, I don't need any variances. I'm saying to you, he needs 250 12th Avenue may still be there, it still may be yours, somebody's got to determine that, he doesn't have 250. So I say to you, what's the rush to do preliminary and final tonight? You've already given him his text amendment. Why don't you take and you have to make sure that you're going to get all the protections that you think you're supposed to be getting, all the promises, and how do you assure that? And it can't be left just that we'll comply. And what I've heard is, you know, yeah, there's 15 minutes. And I understand. Ross, no, because you got me worked up, Ross. You know that. And Bruce. So what I'm saying to you is, as I said, I'm passionate, I guess, about this, and maybe a little too passionate about this. But I still think that they'll get, it's not that I'm trying to say don't get there. I'm just saying, please follow your procedures. If you're going to do it within the procedures that you have set up. And also, if you have made that decision that it's in the best interest of Conshohocken to have this here, don't rush on one night. Even what your staff says, don't rush on one night. Your planning commission didn't look at it. It looked at it more from a text amendment perspective. So don't look at it from that. The Montgomery County Planning Commission, same thing. They looked at it as a text amendment, not this. So therefore, I think tonight's not the night to decide this, and you move forward. And I think, so that would be my perspective for the Borough Council tonight. As I said, I'm a suit like everybody. I'm one of those paid lawyers. I, too, as I said, was on a planning commission in Lower Moreland for 18 years and chairman of it for 6. So I've been on the side of a planning commission, and I understand at least somewhat of what we've done. And I know, and again, this is not gospel or anything, but Mr. Barron said he sees it typically. I know in the 18 years, we never granted a preliminary and final for a lot that big, with a project that big.
Can I respond?
After, we're going to have individual public comment, then you'll have an opportunity to respond. If there's any individuals in the audience that wish to come forward and make public comment for 2 minutes, this would be the time. Please identify your name and address for the record.
Kevin Bowe, 331 East Hector Street. Born and raised in Conshohocken. All of council knows me. You know what business I'm in. I'm in the gas station business. But I want to let you know one thing. You were told a lie a couple minutes ago, and I just want to clear that up. You were told that Wawa is putting diesel in for cars. A passenger car weighs 4,000 pounds. A triaxle dump truck weighs 73,280 pounds. A tractor trailer is a combination vehicle that weighs 80,000 pounds. You may not get the combination vehicles in there. Ridge and Ridge and Conshohocken Road, the Wawa has triaxle dump trucks getting diesel fuel all day long. I know the business. The reason Wawa puts diesel in is for commercial vehicles, not for cars. So you were not told the truth on that item tonight. Thank you.
Kevin, did you want to address?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the traffic. I'm Ted Lucas from 207 State Avenue. How would that traffic go in and out of Wawa? Would that go straight out on Fayette Street as it's facing that, or would it go to the right, go out on that? How would that go?
You want to say something now?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if you have your time, answer that question very quickly.
Casey Moore. No, he is up at the podium and he's going to explain that. Go ahead.
So the way the site is situated, I'll call Fayette Street north and south. The site sits on the east side of Fayette Street on the north side of 11th Avenue. The northernmost driveway for the property, which is one of 2 on Fayette Street, will function as a full movement driveway. That means it will permit left turns in, right turns out, left turns out. So it's a full movement driveway. There is a second driveway located to its south and just north of 11th Avenue, and that driveway will permit right turns in and right turns out only. There is also an exit to the rear onto Harry Street. There will be internal signage to the site that will also allow vehicles and direct vehicles to be able to use that rear access to come out onto 11th Avenue and only be permitted to turn right to head west toward Fayette Street and utilize the traffic signal where those vehicles could go left through or right.
Hello, it's me again. I'm Dan Alfaro, 105 Apartment 1, Colwell Lane. I'm just wondering, this is my first time hearing all this. It's really exciting, learning a lot. Wondering if there's a proposed completion date for construction in this phase of proposal. Understanding that things change, I'm just like wondering, you know.
Go ahead, Ross, if you want to.
Yeah, from the time you start construction, it takes approximately 9 months to deliver the site, to have the Wawa installed. We recognize that this property has a significant demolition that would have to take place first. So the 9 months that we're talking about is after the demolition and the commencement of construction.
Is there anybody else for public comment?
Hi, I'm Stacy Ellam, E-L-L-A-M. I live at 334 West 10th Avenue. I was curious about the fuel delivery, in which direction the trucks will be coming in, because that's a tight turn on Harry Street, and those are pretty tight parameters that you have there. Just wondering what the plan was for that. Thank you.
So the fuel delivery truck would come towards the site from the 476, so that direction in Fayette Street, and it would come in the right in, right out, that first driveway. It would then circulate around the back of the building, along the right side of the building, around the back of the building, and then come in front of the canopies to deliver the fuel to the tanks. And then from there, it would circulate around on the right side, around the back, and then out the full movement driveway on Fayette Street, where it can make a left to get back on Fayette Street to head down towards 476.
Is there anyone else for public comment?
Hello, Rosemary Northcutt, 112 East 6th Avenue, Northcutt. Since this site has had gas storage and there may be other things that have been stored and there is going to be demolition, are there any protective measures that need to be taken to protect the neighbors and with dust and any chemicals that could be released into the soil?
Yeah, the demolition will have to satisfy any and all requirements that the borough has on the demolition in terms of the hours of the day that it's permitted. The demolition will also require that the trucks be there to remove what has been there for the last 80 years, and we will comply with all the borough's ordinances in terms of hours of operation and how demolition take place. My experience usually is that you have to hose it down and try and control the dust, and we're very sensitive to the neighbors, and we're not going to do anything that we can avoid that would aggravate them and cause them to just come and complain to you. So this is a sensitive project. There's only these houses. This is the Conshohocken Physical Therapy, and this is another office building right here, and you have Mr. DiMettio's house right there. We also will have a fencing along the property, and As we spoke about before, the air pump and the charging station will be moved away from this side to either the other side of the property or to the back of the property. Can I speak to some of these other issues now? Okay.
My name is Tom Motto. I'm from 218 West 6th Avenue. I just it's a question for anyone wearing a suit. So, like, being in the back tonight, there was a lot of confusion on this whole thing, and I've been trying to follow this whole process, and I'm still a little confused, so just hoping to get something cleared up. So, is this Wawa's proposal with council input, or does this, because I heard one of the positives of voting yes for this was that we would get input on the Wawa, and if they win in court, they get to put whatever Wawa they wanted. So is this the Wawa that we want as Conshohocken? And if it is, then why are there still questions as to are there 5 pumps versus 6 pumps, and if they're diesel pumps or not? Like, I'm trying to figure out where we stand in that whole process, and just hoping that anybody can clear that up for me. So that's all. Thanks.
So there was an application for land development filed by the applicant. It's been reviewed by Borough Council, by Borough staff, and there's been revisions made to that plan based on the comments that staff has made. And that's the plan that's before council this evening. Anybody else for public comment at this time? Seeing none, Mr. Weiss, I'll allow you the opportunity to address any other comments that have been made during that portion, and Mr. Pollock's presentation as well.
Just to respond to some of the comments that Steve made. The ordinance, although effective in 5 days, we will not have a revised plan back to the borough within 5 days. By the time the plan comes back to the borough to satisfy the remaining conditions of the approval letter, we will be well beyond the 5 days. Your Borough Planning Commission and the County Planning Commission both reviewed this plan when it was initially submitted. You know, and I'm surprised that Mr. Pollock making such an issue out of this, but you know that it's not uncommon for a municipality, for elected officials to rely on the recommendations of their staff. You have a civil engineer, a traffic engineer, you have your zoning officer, and you have your borough director of engineering. You have 4 consultants all reviewing this plan and making recommendations to you. Your planning commission had the benefit of all that. I believe you also know that it's not uncommon that plans get approved subject to conditions. You're very busy, and the law does not require that an applicant keep coming back to you every time they make a change to a plan, but we're not here to get the plan signed. We're not here to get a building permit. We're only here for you to hopefully pass a resolution that would approve the preliminary/final plan, which is 80% of the time on some use like this, they're always combined. There's not one right after another. The 27 hearings that we had over the 2+ year period of time was not a time period that was created just by the applicant. And what you are seeing here tonight is an effort to drive this down, to keep your attention, and to drag this out. We're trying to avoid that. If the ordinance was being considered, was there anything wrong with having the plan engineered? We went to that expense. That was our risk. And by engineering that plan, we can finally move on with this and remove what's at the Moore site right now. Mr. Pollock talks about 20 feet in the property. Mr. Pollock did not explain to you that that's a paper street, and the street was never built. There's no signage. When his expert, quote-unquote expert on this issue, testified at the zoning hearing board, he had not even been to the property where this 12th Street was supposed to be. He couldn't answer whether there was a street sign there for 12th Street, which there is not. And there's no connection or no point for a 12th Street to go to because it backs right in to the stadium. In addition, the Moores had photographs that we presented to the zoning hearing board that showed that there had never been a 12th Street and that they had used that area. The law is, if a property owner owns on both sides of a paper street that has never been made official or built, then the property owners on the opposite side own to the center line. and the Moores own to the center line of that property. The Moores always paid their real estate taxes. The fact that there might be a 20-foot strip, that there's not a separate tax bill, using your common sense, does that mean that taxes were not paid for that property and somebody got cheated out of real estate taxes? Therefore, the minimum lot width is something that we comply with because we own both sides. We own the full frontage of that property. The Moores do at least. I think that are the questions that Mr. Pollock raised, at least the ones that he identified as being so important. For these residents, there will be a fence, and that will be behind those properties, and that is on the plan. I don't think it's uncommon in these situations for a municipal board to be asked to approve a plan subject to compliance with engineers' review letters. And if we revise these plans, we could very well have another review letter. And is it necessary for us to come back to you and take your time? I would hope not. You've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. You can, yeah, you can hand it to me.
I'm going to object to this. Whoever wrote it is not here. It's hearsay.
We're not under the rules of evidence.
And again, Mr. Weiss, as I've indicated, Mr. Just give them to me, I'll pass them out. That's fine, thanks. Yeah.
Multiple page report that nobody has ever seen.
I understand, and this is not, again, not being admitted into the record. There's not an evidentiary record being created here. Mr. Pollock referred to it in his presentation. At this point, I would suggest maybe council want to take a brief comfort break before deciding to take action on this matter. We'll go into recess for approximately 5 minutes.
Yeah, I do.
Let's just continue. If we need it. She does. Okay. What do you think?
With all this, it reminds me of the MGM studio when they showed the beginning of the, I'm trying to think what movie I just had.
You didn't. You didn't. You said what you needed to say.
Right.
we have the consideration of the preliminary final land development plans prepared and provided by Provco Pineville Fayette LP. Are there any additional comments or questions from council at this point?
I have two questions. Okay, Paul, this is directed at you. Do you see any problem with the runoff from all the asphalt for here?
So the applicant has proposed an extensive system of underground stormwater
Okay.
chambers that are on all three sides of the building,
Okay.
not including, of course, where the gas pumps are.
Right.
And for anything that doesn't infiltrate on the site, there's an overflow system that Mr. Barron described that connects
Through the pipes.
across Fayette Street on
Right.
the Plymouth Township side.
Okay.
So the short answer is no.
Okay, all right. Have you, no, I'm fine, thank you. Ross, has there been a contamination test done on the property for any seepage?
Yes, we have an environmental engineer, and the property was examined by, I think the environmental engineers may have been from Pinoni and a subcontractor. So yes,
Okay,
it's not contaminated.
okay, that's all. Thank you.
Is there anything further from council at this point?
No.
There has been provided to you a draft of a resolution which provides for the approval of the preliminary final land development plan, subject to certain conditions, compliance with the review letters as indicated by the applicant, along with compliance with all of the other borough, county, state, federal rules and regulations, along with execution of certain development, financial security agreements, easements, stormwater management agreements, things of that nature to be approved by my office, and along with a specification regarding the payment of the $75,000 in lieu of the interim modifications or improvements to Fayette Street and 11th Street identified in the Pinoni Associates, Inc. review letter. In addition, it grants the waivers that were discussed by the applicant's engineer. If it is the will of Borough Council at this time, I would ask for a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. We'd have a roll call vote.
Councilmember Sokolowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
No.
Councilmember Flanagan?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokely?
Yes.
Councilmember Leonard?
Yes.
Vice President Tutino?
No.
President Griffin?
No.
Motion carries.
That concludes the consideration of this matter.
Mr. President, we have no other business on the agenda for this evening.
Meeting adjourned.